Next item on the agenda is to adopt the agenda. Motion by Bakhtiari. I will second. Please open the vote.
One moment while members sign in. The vote is open. And the vote is closed.
All right, the agenda is adopted, 6 yeas, 0 nays. Next item is to approve the minutes. I'll entertain a motion to approve. Motion by Bakhtiari, second by Amos. Please open the vote.
The vote is open. And the vote is closed.
The minutes are approved, 6 yeas, 0 nays. 7 yeas, 0 nays. We've been joined by Councilmember Antonio Lewis. Next item on the agenda, colleagues, I know we've sent out a couple emails, but just a reminder for our 2023 Community Development and Human Services goals and objectives, please send those in to me or Jared as soon as possible. We want to try to have those approved and adopted at our next CDHS meeting, which I believe is on February 14th, Valentine's Day. For our lovers out there, I hope you will love our committee as well and get those goals and objectives to us as soon as possible. With that, next on the agenda is public comment.
There are several.
All right, I have our first public speaker. So we have 5 public speakers. The first one I'm showing is Ms. Henry Jordan. Ms. Jordan, if you could come to the podium. And just a reminder for our folks who are speaking at public comment, at roughly the 30-second mark, I'll whisper gently into the microphone and let you know your time is coming up, but you can go ahead and go forward.
Giving honor to the Spirit of God, everyone that's here. Therefore, I make a decree that every people, nation, and language who speak anything amiss against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego should be cut in pieces, and their houses should be made a dunghill, because there is no other God that can deliver like this sort. Daniel 3, chapter 29, verse. James Griff refused to give Jesus the glory that is due to him. Is the reason I refuse to be with him. I pray not that thou shouldest take them out of the world, but that thou shouldest keep them from the evil. St. John 17, chapter 15, verse. That wicked one is the devil. Some Greek texts read, but he that is begotten of God, Jesus, keep him, the believer. Out of the mouth of babes and sucklings hast thou ordained strength because of thy enemies, that thou mightest seal the enemy and the avenger. Psalms 8, chapter 2nd verse. He chooses weak things to shame things deemed by man to be mighty, and things men do not even realize exist, to counteract things which are powers and institutions erected and relied upon by man. Jesus answered him, I spake openly to the world. I ever taught in the synagogue and in the temple, whither the Jews always resort. In a secret have I said nothing. James 18, chapter 28th verse. When they heard, the Greek construction indicates that the rage built as they sat listening. Jesus said, James Griff, can't help other men to be a Christ-like husband, so I can't work with him. I seek to set Christ's will in my life and what he demanded me to be, called me to be, and for others also, because Christ made us to serve him and him only. We didn't make ourselves. Thank you for listening. Obey Jesus.
Thank you, Ms. Jordan. Up next, we have Ms. Maddie Freeman. Ms. Freeman, you'll have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon. I stand here on behalf of all of us at Columbia Seniors at Mechanicsville. We deserve better treatment than we are being given in that building. I'm not only speaking for myself, but for every resident that live in senior housing. Please take note that we need repairs. We need care. We need attention. I won't use up my whole 3 minutes because I've said what needs to be said. Help us. Amen.
Thank you, Ms. Freeman. And I know, I see Ms. Teresa Dunn back there. You're not up next, Ms. Dunn, but seeing both of y'all, I definitely want to connect after the meeting about the issues. I know we had a conversation with the Columbia team last year. It sounds like some of those things, or many of those things, may not have been addressed. So we'll follow up, but I just wanted to acknowledge that y'all are here. Laura Ringer. Oh, sorry, Councilmember Lewis.
And I will note that she stared at me a few times, so we heard you. When you talk about Mechanicsville, I fully heard you. I understand that's not my district, and I touch it. I touch it fully. I'll be working with Councilmember Dozier on seeing whatever we need to do. I know I just sent some resources to Dunbar already. And I know that the issues we have over there have been happening that's the entire Zone 3. So I appreciate you full out. We praying for you, and we standing with you. Myself and Councilmember Dozier, we got a really good relationship. And you coming down here, I know you took today off. I know you don't come down here. We got you. You on our side. We ain't on the other side. I ain't got nothing to do with happening in other districts. But me and Councilmember Dozier, we got you. Thank you. I know what you wanted to hear. We got you.
Thank you, Councilmember Lewis. Our next speaker is Laura Ringer.
Have problems. I am with Mechanicsville also. She's mostly said everything we needed to be said today, but I want my face in the place so we know each other and can speak for each other, because we're in dire need of repairs and stuff. I had one window lights out in October. And I know this is minor, but they grow, things grow. In October, my light in the kitchen, which is a what do you call those long windows, mirror, I'm 73, so you got to give me time. What happened is, I asked them to repair it, couldn't repair it. They didn't have the part. They don't have a light. So here it is, January. I still don't have it repaired. I checked on it yesterday. You know, and I'm just saying, these little things add up. We got sockets that's not working. We've got lights that's out, light sockets that's out, you know, plugs that are. We got a lot of things going on, and we need help over there. We're gonna get. I got electrocuted trying to plug in a bulb in the bedroom because it's a short circuit. So I'm not gonna keep you long, but we need these minor things done. So the worst of things won't happen. Electrocuted people, you know, like we had the elevator. We got it fixed, thank God. Somebody was stuck on there for 45 minutes before the firemen come in and release it. So we got things over there and issues. It's fixed now, but they're old, outdated, and need repair. Thank you, everybody.
All right, thank you, Ms. Ringer. Ms. Teresa Dunn.
Hi, my name is Teresa Dunn, and I'm two residents at Mechanicsville Senior. We have so many issues over there. I mean, you know, like we should be at a point in our lives where we're enjoying our lives, and we should not have to be worried about where we live. Laura said that our elevator is working barely. We have a sticker in the elevator. The inspection sticker is from 21. We haven't had a fire drill in, I know it's been over 5 years. We have residents, as Ms. Maddie Freeman is on the walker, we have residents in wheelchairs, and we have multiple residents that are on walkers. If we have a fire, these people, you know, there's no way for them to get out of that building. And I'm passionate about this, you know, like, well, I have a boyfriend there. He's in a motorized wheelchair. So every time the fire alarm goes off, I'm running down the steps to ensure that there's no fire so I can get him out of there. This place is, I don't know, it's awful. It's awful. It really is. I mean, you know, like, it's like since the CEO of Columbia died, we can see the difference in this building. And it's just, you know, like, so we have one residence there that has not had any heat or air in over 5 months. We just had some of the coldest days ever, and they have not had heat or air in over 5 months. It's off. I had another residence that I wanted to come down here, but he's on oxygen and he don't have traveling oxygen. This man actually has mold in his apartment. There's mold on his ceiling. He has a water heater that leaked. He has mold in his carpeting. And we had a meeting with corporate, and I showed them these pictures that I took in his apartment. It's horrible. And not every, and being older residents, a lot of people are afraid to speak up for fear of losing their apartments. But something needs to be done. And as long as I have breath in me, I'm going to keep Columbia name out in the forefront because something needs to be done about it. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Dunn. And I do want to note for our neighbors at Columbia Residential, Atlanta Housing will be presenting at our next City Council meeting, or our next CDHS meeting. I'm going to reach out to Terry Lee and the Atlanta Housing team today and make sure that the work that they're doing to hold Columbia accountable is reflected in their presentation at the next meeting. So I just want y'all to be aware. We'll follow up after this meeting about more of those specific issues, but y'all are, to Councilmember Lewis's point, what y'all had to say today was heard loud and clear. So thank you for coming down to City Hall today. Our final speaker today, Mr. DeWine Robinson.
Afternoon, committee. I like how you guys really listen to your seniors and really respect their time coming down. As we know, what goes on in District 4 and District 12 also affect Atlanta, right? We have to make sure that we adhere to everybody. And I like how you guys really stand up as men for your district. Doesn't mean you have to call out other council members, but I mean, we know other districts are lacking, and it affects Atlanta as a whole. Speaking to that, this Walmart over on MLK. I know Walmart is a big corporation, big money, big donors, all that goes on when you're dealing with a conglomerate like Walmart. But when you come and you make promises that you're not, not only that you did not deliver on, but when you leave a community like that, where we have the AU students there that depend on that Walmart, we have other seniors that in that area that depend on that Walmart, and people that shop over there depend on that. We cannot allow places like Walmart to just leave. And if you leave, I would like for us to hold them accountable when they're trying to build Walmarts in other areas in Atlanta, to deny their permits. If you're going to do that to our people and leave, and you as a company, it's your responsibility. If you're saying that there's a lot of theft going on there, take the proper measures to make sure that it is limited to the point where it's not messing up your profit margin, because we do understand as a business, you're there to make a profit. But when you come into an impoverished neighborhood, you know there's theft going on. Walmart has a $1 billion insurance policy for return and theft. So at what point do we allow them to just leave because they're saying it's theft going on? You got $1 billion policy for that. And we just can't let them off the hook, know what I'm saying, for that when we understand the business. Most of y'all on finance committee, you know that they got $1 billion insurance policy for theft. So theft can't be the reason why you're saying, oh, we're gonna shut down. They have not given nonprofits the money that they promised to give them over there. A lot of this stuff don't even fall on you guys. They fall on the corporations, but it fall on you guys and we don't hold them accountable. And we have to just understand that it's gonna be a big drought over there. It's my understanding that they're saying that if Walmart leave is gonna be replaced by a grocery store. That's not good enough when you have high school students and college students there. If I have a midterm paper that's due tomorrow and I can just walk over to Walmart to get the necessary things I need for my paper, I should be able to do that. They came there with a promise, Mr. Doge, and we got to hold them accountable, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. All right, y'all, that completes our public comment for today. Next on the agenda is presentations. We have 2 presentations today. There's a couple of things that I want to see if the committee will be amenable to. The first being we have a communication that we need to pull off held, that I would like to pull off held and take that business first, and then we'll move on to the next item before we go into presentations. Oh, 1 second. So slight change on that, if the committee will indulge me. Rather than taking the communication first, we do have a legislative item, and the individual that's going to be speaking to that, Mr. Odie Donald, has a limited amount of time, and I would like to actually move that piece first next in our agenda so we can get that worked out. Seeing how, I don't think we need to take a motion to move that forward, but it's number 7 on your agenda. And then colleagues, I believe we have a substitute before you should be at your seats. So that will be referenced in this conversation as well. Please read in the caption, and Mr. Donald, if you can come up, and then we'll take care of the substitute, and then we'll move into discussion.
Committee like to motion to bring forward the substitute, and I'll read that caption.
I'll move to bring forward the substitute. Second by Lewis. Please open the vote.
Vote is open. The vote is closed.
Substitute has been brought forward. Mr. Donald.
Yeah, how you doing?
May I read the caption?
Sorry,
I'm
thank you.
Item number 7 is 22-01056. It's an ordinance by council members Antonio Lewis, Michael Julian Bond, Matt Westmoreland, Keisha Sean Waits, Jason Winston, Amir Faroki, Byron D. Amos, Jason Dozier, Liliana Bakhtiari, Alex Swan, Howard Shook, Mary Norwood, Dustin Hillis, Andrea L. Boone, and Marcy Collier Overstreet, as substituted by Community Development Human Services Committee, to establish the City of Atlanta Department of Labor and Employment Services, to amend Chapter 2, Article 2, Division 3, Subdivision 1, Section 2-135D, to provide that the Committee on Community Development and Human Services shall have jurisdiction over the Department of Labor and Employment Services, to amend Chapter 2, Article 5, Section 2-222 of the City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances to add the Department of Labor and Employment Services to the organization of the executive branch, to amend Chapter 2, Article 5, Section 2-227 of the City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances to provide for the functions and duties of the Department of Labor and Employment Services, to authorize the Chief Financial Officer to create the appropriate department organizations and accounts, and to anticipate and appropriate the necessary funding in connection with the creation of the Department of Labor and Employment Services, to authorize the Chief Financial Officer and the Commissioner of the Department of Human Resources to transfer any positions currently assigned to any office or department operating under the executive branch to the Department of Labor and Employment Services, and for other purposes.
Thank you. Mr. Donald.
All right. So, Mr. Chairman, first, thank you for having us here today. Extremely excited about bringing the Atlanta Department of Labor and Employment Services before the committee today. It is something that I think the mayor has been very vocal about, talking about it on the campaign trail and throughout his time, his first year as mayor. And I think we want to continue with all of our promises made, being promises kept. And so today is one of the first steps to doing so. Definitely want to recognize each and every one of you for playing a very important part for kind of helping to frame this. Probably none more important than Councilmember Lewis, who's also been an integral part of our planning and kind of getting feedback from labor to make sure that we align this department appropriately. As I believe you are aware, we already have WorkSource Atlanta, which has been connected to Invest Atlanta, but is our federally funded training arm for employment services, employment and training services. What the Atlanta Department of Labor and Employment Services does is really supercharge those activities to kind of expand on that, adding additional resources to it, as well as kind of bringing those things under a new department that is funded by a combination of ARPA funding, the workforce development funds allocated to the Gulch, and tying any other additional resources together that also assist us in being a watchdog entity for some of the labor functions that the state actually has the oversight of. And so this department is a direct reflection of some of the needs in our community, and we believe that it will help take employment and training to the next level. And with that, I'll take any specific questions that you may have on the legislation.
Thank you, Mr. Donald. Before I turn it over to my colleagues for questions and comments, I did have a couple of questions.
Absolutely.
I know I've had some conversations with your team about this particular legislation. I was proud to co-sponsor, but just if you could state for the public record, you say this is to supercharge the work that we're already doing. If you can talk through what that means, what are our goals or objectives, and how do you see WorkSource? I know Amy Lancaster King with WorkSource Atlanta is in the room with us today, but how do you see them fitting into this larger work that y'all are looking to do?
Yeah, absolutely. So listen, I'm super excited about this, probably because of my personal experience, and I'll just share some of that with you. Here in the state of Georgia, I actually led Coastal Workforce Services, which is the 10-county area around Savannah, going as far north as Screven County and as far south as Glenn on the Jacksonville border. From there, appointed by Governor Deal to actually lead the state's workforce system when it was under the Georgia Department of Economic Development, and then serving as a combination of the Economic Development and Labor Commissioner for the District of Columbia. So as you could imagine, extremely passionate about this work. And what this does is take our federally funded at about $3.2 million, I think it's 3.18, $3.2 million that is allocated from the federal government, which has some restrictions. WIO is a lot more flexible than the other iterations like WIA and CETA and some of the older iterations for employment and training. While WIO is more flexible, it also has a lot of restrictions that make it a little bit more difficult to serve, either the harder to serve or in volume. And so what we want to do is expand on those resources so that we're using what would be considered flex funding, local funds that you can kind of determine your own performance outcomes and things of that nature to deliver everything from apprenticeships, youth job training, but also really kind of add in some of the nuance that's necessary to come to agreement with our own internal partners like PACE and AXME and some of the others as we kind of negotiate our MOUs. As you see, the mayor's office was very engaged in those type of negotiations, increasing the pay of our frontline workers and doing, very creative financial things around labor and workforce development. This will allow us to continue those activities and really expand what WorkSource does. So if they're serving 300 people through their current federal allocation, this might allow them to be able to double that. So that's really the goal, to be able to serve more and better.
Thank you, Mr. Donald. I have a couple speakers lined up from the committee. Councilmember Lewis, did you?
For sure. Mr. Odie Donald, he says Mr. Donald. I'm going to keep it professional how you talk. We are blessed to have you, brother. To understand your impact on labor in the South. right? You've been the reason why we've removed some of these right-to-work laws in certain cities in the South. And so when we spoke the first time, you say, this is what I do, and I ain't believe you, you showed me. Thank you to our mayor for keeping his promise, his campaign promise. This was my campaign promise first, but we got a mayor who draws circles. He literally was looking at council members as they were running for office, and he was saying, I'm going to draw a circle around this person, circle around this person, circle around this person. He drew circles. I appreciate our mayor for doing the circle drawing that he's drawn, because in America, we've used the word right to work like it means something, but it really means right to work for less. Folks in the city of Atlanta have had the right to work for less for 40, 50 years. And so this right here is going to change an entire generation. We're talking about millennials, we're talking about Generation Zs, the folks that came before us. We now get an opportunity to work in sanitation. My entire life, before I came to council, I wanted to work on the back of the trash truck. I knew that meant I had opportunity going from lower class to middle class. One generation, the strongest job in the city of Atlanta is a union job. The strong union job is a job with the city of Atlanta or the county. It don't get stronger than this. So I appreciate you for doing that. I got a few more things I want to say, because today is a historic day in the city of Atlanta. And we got a mayor who started the Department of Transportation. I sit on that committee, vice chair. That wouldn't happen without him. Now he just started Labor Department. I wish I would have been the person that started, but I'm not. We got a mayor who's drawing circles, so keep going after that. Also, I hired today. My chief of staff actually stepped down to take another position. Michael McClure came to work for me for one reason. We left labor. I spent the last 7 years of my life traveling 230 days per year for labor. And I convinced my chief of staff to leave labor to come here, because to me, we were going to make Atlanta the strongest labor place in the world, right? Every magazine, every newspaper article in the world is saying Atlanta's the best place to move, best place to buy a city. Don't let nobody trick you. It's still the best place, especially for people that look like us. Still the best place in the world, right? And so to make it stronger for people who are poor to become middle class, that's what today did. Today is about helping people advance to the middle class. A job with the city gets you to middle class. That we're talking about $19 an hour because of the $4 increase that our mayor put in. So nobody working for the city of Atlanta is making less than $19 right now. Another thing, I'm on record as saying that Atlanta won't work until the trash man gets treated like the policeman and the fireman. Today, the trash man got a voice. And so when the trash man feels that way, everybody in the city gonna feel that way. I'm inspired by that. Atlanta has to show the world, not only the South, we can't call ourselves the city on the hill. Dr. King's our favorite son. Senator Raphael Warnock's our second favorite son. We can't call ourselves the city on the hill until we start looking like the city on the hill. So we're talking about New York. We're talking about people that are making real money. I don't never want to hear Atlanta compared to Macon, Augusta, Savannah, Nashville, Tennessee. We used to compare ourselves to Birmingham, Alabama. We shot past them. We're challenging. We're battling with London. We're battling with New York. We already done shot past San Francisco and Los Angeles. I don't want to hear us comparing ourselves to them. We got to become stronger for the poor person in Atlanta who's trying to get the middle class. Hamida, I'm going to talk about Miss Hamida. Hamida is a great person to have appointed to be over that department to help us bring it in. When you go and you find a person who's already in labor, right? So she's been fighting us. We didn't just hire somebody who on our side. We hire somebody on the other side. To hire somebody who on the other side who has those values from labor, real labor. Atlanta's been losing. To me, I appreciate you again, Odia. Our mayor drew a circle around the city when he hired you. Because you come in, you keep talking about labor, and you showed me you mean labor. I'm walking around this building, people don't understand what unions are. I'm happy that you understand what unions are, because I know what unions are. Today, President Lee Saunders, the international president for ASME, 5 million members. We're just talking about Atlanta, where he got 1644, international. He called to say today was a great day, not a good day. Today, labor got to the table. We ain't no longer on the menu. And so I appreciate you, Odie. I'm thank you to our council colleagues. For myself to be the top name on this. This is something I ran on. We said campaign promises. This is a legit campaign promise for me. Campaign promises kept right here. Thank you, Mayor, for drawing a circle. Thank you to each council member. This is the first time I got some of my Republican colleagues to sign a paper. Each council member signed this, whether you black, white, green, or blue. We all understand that Georgia has been the city on a hill, and the South is watching us. Watch South Fulton, watch Augusta, watch Savannah, watch Chattanooga. They're all about to do this. They're all about to do this. We don't have to listen to I don't work for the mayor. I don't work for the governor. A matter of fact, they should be reaching out to me to find out what the people where I'm from, because I got a base. I got a base. So they should be reaching out to us to find out what my base want to hear. My base loves this. I can't wait till tomorrow. God willing, you'll stop by. God willing, the mayor will stop by. Tomorrow, we're going to hire 600 people in the city of Atlanta. In June, God willing, we're going to fix their pension, because we know that the pension ain't working right. I got to live on this pension. My wife, she's very concerned about how do I retire, because 30% of what I make now won't help me. It ain't going to help nobody that we live with. So we need to look at ways to go back to that old pension in Atlanta to really take care of people. I think we have the right mayor to do it. I don't know what anybody think, but no mayor has ever even tried this. So I appreciate you, Mayor. I appreciate you, Odie. Donna, I appreciate you, Theo, who was the in-between person, because this is a big deal to me. I appreciate y'all for doing the work and making sure that poor people get an opportunity to advance the middle class. I'm one of them. The union is literally the reason why I'm sitting here. So I appreciate you again for doing the work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey,
I want to make the motion. I done seen people do this all the time. I'm new down here, right? So God willing, right? One of your council member Keisha Waits, God willing, she'll be my second. But I'm gonna make the motion right now to pass this paper. I know more people gonna talk. I'm gonna make the motion because I want to be the person to make the motion, just like I wanted to be the person on that paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Lewis, and we'll note the motion to approve. Councilmember Bakhtiari.
I'm going to let Ms. Waits, Councilmember Waits, go ahead in a second. So for those of you who did not go to church on Sunday, don't worry, you just did. Yeah. And so don't worry, you can go to church twice this week because you were just in church. So, a couple of questions. I wanted to establish something very quick. I do appreciate Councilmember Lewis's enthusiasm about this. It is very exciting. I know this is something that the mayor said he was going to do at the beginning of his term, and it's really wonderful to see it come into fruition. I just wanted to establish really quick, though, because I want us to make sure we're clear on who is responsible for what. Right to work is established by the state, correct?
That's correct.
Yes, so I just want to make sure we're clear on that, and that we are obviously going to do everything we can, but I want to make sure that people know that this will not change Georgia as a right-to-work state. That is not within our authority.
Correct.
Yeah, so make sure we clear that up. So the other piece is, I was really happy to see that the state did, though, pass a paper last year about misclassification. So I want to make sure that one of the things that this will do is help to ensure that we are not 1099 workers who deserve to be taken care of and paid living wages, and to make sure we also get that taxable income. So would you mind speaking to that a little bit?
Yeah, so while we are formally establishing the department on July 1, where all of the functions will be available, what the mayor actually put in place on day one was an Office of Labor and Innovation. And so Ms. Humida Embry is our Labor and Innovation Officer, the first hire of what will be the department, and she actually kind of serves as a liaison for everything from those internal negotiations that I referenced earlier, but also serving as a watchdog for those areas for misclassification. Also, I always use this same example. You know, if you're working on a construction site and they're not adhering to Davis-Bacon pay rates or things of that nature, then you always would go to the state of Georgia, which is our organization of record who can actually levy fines and other penalties. But you can also come now to the city of Atlanta, who can serve as an advocate and assist in those watchdog activities, additional additional reporting and things of that nature. So you're 100% right. It gives us the state having that authority and putting those things in place now allows us to be a better partner to the state as well as our citizens.
And that's wonderful, and I would love to get an estimate on how much money how much our revenues are going to increase from this now that we will have this watchdog in place and that we have the state, as people know, we're superseded on that. But I want to make sure that, that we know like exactly the impact that this is going to have on lives and, and the numbers that we're going to see from
So I
this.
would tell you, that's another reason, so another function, similar to some of the things that we've done in other communities, you would have, and the state has this, by the way, in their workforce development office, have a program and performance component where you're able to look at everything from those type of missed revenues, be able to capture workforce trends, and identify things to be able to help attract and retain businesses, as well as other things across the gamut. So we'll have that capacity within this department we don't technically have right now.
Right, and that's great to hear. And I mean, I remember, and just so folks know, I remember I read the Carpenter's white paper on this, on misclassification. I mean, the state was missing out on, what, close to $450 million a year.
Yeah, I think I
so-
remember those numbers, somewhere around that ballpark, yep.
And so that's huge. But also, I wanted to speak to, or I wanted to ask if, what this would mean in terms of apprenticeship opportunities for contracts coming to the city, and also would this establish that some of our contract hires would be with union certified businesses? Because one of the big things I learned about on the campaign trail was we're losing out to people who are coming in at cheaper bids because of misclassification, but also, you know, in placing job reportings on Indeed, we aren't getting certified. I mean, this is a nationwide issue. We aren't getting certified workers. So sandblasting a bridge or something of that nature.
Yeah, so I think this would also assist. So right now, WorkSource Atlanta does have the capacity to deliver customized training, which apprenticeships are one example of, on-the-job training. I mean, you have a variety of different customized training opportunities, but I think the capacity is limited based on that 3.2 million having to be split between youth, adult, and dislocated worker services. Adding this influx of resources should allow that capacity to increase, and of course, that's the goal of the mayor. I don't think I've heard anybody talk about apprenticeships with such delight in the way that he does.
And I hope, and I know I've mentioned this to Ms. King, but my hope is that with the establishment of this, I want to say for the record that I hope I get to assist the administration and Labor Council with exploring apprenticeship opportunities starting back in our school systems again.
Yeah, so look, I think the mayor's been pretty clear. You heard Councilmember Lewis say he draws circles and not lines. I think you've also heard him say Atlanta's a group project, and you guys are all, without question, a part of the group. So we'd expect to continue that partnership.
Yeah, you're right about hearing Councilmember Lewis. He was pretty shy with his opinion just a moment ago, but really excited to see this come into fruition. As he said, I mean, you could not have had a better first hire than Humida Embry, and I'm excited to see this happen and to assist in any way that I can with the building of with his office. Thank you.
And Councilmember Bakhtiari, Councilmember Winston.
Thank you, Mr. Donald. I think we've all completely set ourselves up for failure by not getting our hands up before Councilmember Lewis. But I did want to get into the weeds a little bit. I mean, I'm definitely in favor of this and support it. But kind of want to talk about the labor and employment of this actually new department. Can you talk about, I know it talks about transferring positions. Can you talk about where you have an idea where those people are coming from?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there are only two positions that would technically be transferred, and there is a labor and employment, it is labor and employment section within HR. I think it's funded at about 6 to 8 positions. 6 of those are filled. I think 2 of them haven't been filled in a couple of years, and so those 2 would actually be the ones that help us fund the balance of the 3-person labor and innovation office. And so those are the only ones that we foresee being transferred. Right now at WorkSource, I think you've got 9 full-time employees and a contract, and so we'll be looking at that framework. You'll also have the Summer Youth Employment Program. As you know, via ARPA, you have until 26 to be able to expend those funds, while we'll be obligating them before. We used those to fill 3,000 youth positions last year. We expect to do the same this year. So the 5-person team from last year that we utilized to actually oversee that program. We use a similar model this year, so those would be some of the positions. We also have the funding available. It's about $4 million from the Gulch funding. Those would also help to frame out the other positions and roles. So it wouldn't be a lot of transfer of positions outside of those two to make sure that we're connected with the HR commissioner on those, labor-related negotiations and daily activities. But beyond that, it's kind of building it from scratch and leveraging the resources you already have at WorkSource.
Okay, and the ones that are transferring, are we also transferring those responsibilities outside of HR and putting them into?
Yeah,
this
so
department?
those are actually just 2 FTEs. The responsibilities would actually remain with HR. The only difference would be, as you'd imagine, we'll use the MOU as an example. Many times as you get to the final portion, you would come to the mayor's office to have somebody lean in. Well, that's what the Labor and Innovation Office would do.
Okay, well, definitely exciting news and glad to support it, so thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Councilmember Winston. Councilmember Westmoreland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Donald. That was a couple of my questions. I think my only remaining one is WorkSource itself, will it move at all?
That's right. It will technically move under, it will be a division within this larger department. Yes, sir. So it'll have a commissioner and it will be a part of it. So you'll have WorkSource Atlanta, you'll have a defined youth. I think we listed in there the Mayor's Youth Leadership Institute and some of those other functions, including programs and performance.
And while the ordinance becomes effective upon approval, because the operations don't start until July 1st, all of the really detailed pieces of this conversation will be fleshed out during the budget cycle?
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Thank you.
And Councilmember Westmoreland. Councilmember Lewis, and just to remember, we do have a motion and a second on the floor. The second one, I believe, was Waits. So if you could, I know they have to run, but if you could give your remarks, and then we'll get this vote on the road.
And today's such a big deal. I know he'll probably stay about 2 more minutes to hear this part. And so I made sure I heard what the council members would say, because I consider myself the labor expert on council. I spent the last 6 years traveling about 230 days per year to make sure that labor unions were actually growing. From working in Iowa for Hillary, where I ran the caucus in Des Moines for, working where I was the data director for the entire state of Florida for labor unions for Hillary Clinton in 2016. This is what I've dedicated a lot of my life to. And so when we talk about the word right to work, which Councilmember Bakhtiari brought it up, that's a term that was brought up by to kill the working people. I want to make sure folks always know the word right to work. If you any labor union in America has the word that was taken off, it says right to work ... for less. Anytime they use the word right to work, it was amazing marketing. My last position was communications coordinator for everything in the South for ASME. That was 18 different states. I was literally in the room when they came up with the word. You heard the word frontline worker before, or essential worker? I was in the room. Literally, we were throwing spaghetti on the wall, similar to how they probably were for right to work. So once again, I appreciate you, Mayor. I'm fully with you. I know that Odie, I know part of the reason he hired you is because of your work in labor union. So I appreciate the mayor for sitting down with me at a barbershop on Cleveland Avenue and hashing out some very hard conversations. And then 2 weeks later, dropping this paper. So I appreciate y'all for doing what you're supposed to do and continuing to keep the city moving forward. We have a mayor that's drawing circles around people, not lines. We have a mayor who understands that the city is a group project, and I'm speaking with the same language that he's speaking with. I appreciate you, Mayor. Let's get it.
And Councilmember Lewis, please open the vote. Lewis was the motion, second by Waits.
The vote is open. And the vote is closed.
Motion carries 7 yeas, 0 nays. Thank you to the mayor and his team. And just a reminder, this item is actually dual referred. So for those of us or those of our members who are on the Finance Committee, you'll get another crack at this tomorrow. So thank you all for indulging us on that quick change to our agenda. We do have another quick change to the agenda. We do have a communication that we will take before presentations. If you could read in the caption, and Mr. King, if you could come up to the podium, we'll take that, pull that off a hell to get that going.
Item number 25 is 23C 5004, a communication from Mayor Andre Dickens appointing Mr. Shaveen King III to serve as a member of the Atlantic Development Impact Fee Advisory Committee. This appointment is for a term of 2 years.
Thank you. Mr. King, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're interested in this appointment.
Sure, thank you. My name, once again, is Shaveen King III. It's a pleasure to speak before this committee, and I'm extremely grateful to be appointed to the Committee for Development Impact Fees Advisory. My background is in commercial and real estate for the last 16 years. I'm sorry? Okay. Is that better? Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so my background is in commercial real estate, finance, and development. I've worked for the past couple years with a development firm, working here locally in the city of Atlanta, building mixed use and multifamily development. As of recently, I'm with the Atlanta Housing Authority as an asset manager, and I manage a portfolio that kind of spans the city. Open to any questions. I'm extremely thankful, for the opportunity to kind of work with the committee and the city of Atlanta in this effort.
Any questions or comments from colleagues? Motion to approve by Ms. Westmoreland, second by Winston. Please open the vote.
The vote is open. And the vote is closed.
Motion carries 5 yeas, 0 nays. Thank you so much for coming down to City Hall, and thank you for your service to the City of Atlanta.
All right, thank you very much.
All right, colleagues. Going back to our regular agenda, the next item is presentations, and up first for presentations is Department of City Planning. Commissioner Prince, good to see you.
Thank you. It's good to see you too. Happy to be here. So I'm going to jump right in with permits and inspections, the main thing that people seem to care about when they call me. On the first slide, we have the number of building permits issued by quarter, and I want you to take note that this is for the fiscal year. So we just finished the second quarter of the fiscal year here, and the permits are down just a little bit. But construction valuation is up. Now I'm going to take you through the different work streams that we have. We have the 5 work streams. The first 2 here are just the standard permits and the express permits. The express permits are the really small things like fences. Okay. You may notice on here that we have the service level agreements on the slide here. And we are exceeding the service level agreements right now. As you know, we're just working with HR on our staffing issues, and we intend to revisit the service level agreements very soon so that we can give you a more realistic picture of how long things take. Here are the other work streams: commercial, light commercial, and residential. And you can see that these are falling off just a little bit as well. This slide shows the number of inspections that we're doing. The inspections are holding steady. We have the Nova Engineering contract, which helps us cover all the inspections that we need to do. They come in and help us out as needed. We're mostly going back to the in-person building inspections that you think of when you think of a building inspector coming out. We have very few video inspections now. There used to be more during the pandemic. This shows our construction valuation, and you can see that that is down just a little bit for this year as well. Now I'm going to go into code enforcement. Our office of buildings does this as well. You can see on the upper left the complaints by council district. And below that, you can see how we're dealing with this. The thing is, we don't want to take people to court. We want compliance. So we try to work with the property owners as best we can to get compliance from them. This slide shows the short-term rental applications that we've received to date. As you know, we're working on a new short-term rentals ordinance, and we should have a draft prepared next week. The timing was just off. I wish I could have brought it to you today. We have to have it completed by the 27th to introduce it at City Council on February 6th so that we can get it adopted by March 6th. Now, a little bit of information about our Brownfield Revolving Loan Fund program. On your agenda today is an intergovernmental agreement with Invest Atlanta for $3.4 million. Our Brownfield Revolving Loan Fund program provides loans to property owners to clean up brownfield sites, and there's a list here on this slide of recent projects. The last one on the list on Metropolitan Parkway is an old Masonic Lodge. It's a really cool building. Staff went out to visit it yesterday. It's got a theater on the top floor, and it's been vacant for decades. And they are looking for some money to remove asbestos and put this building into productive use again. Our Brownfield Assessment Grant funded the Phase 1 and Phase 2 environmental assessments for the Chattahoochee Brick Company site. We are taking applications for other environmental site assessments. Anyone can submit. We did a Phase 1 assessment for Harold's Barbecue and for other sites along the Chattahoochee River. So on to the zoning ordinance. As you know, our zoning ordinance is from the 80s, and it really needs to be modernized. The language, the uses, basically everything about it, how it works. It's very important that we get this zoning ordinance right because it allows us to implement our plans. It gives us the legal tool to implement all of our plans. So we are spending quite a bit of time with this, and I have to say, the process that we're using for the zoning ordinance is the most inclusive public process I have ever seen for a zoning ordinance. And I've been doing this longer than I would care to admit. So that says a lot. Now what we're doing is we're doing the zoning ordinance rewrite concurrent with updating the CDP. And this is important because what's in the zoning ordinance allows us to implement our comprehensive plan. So this way we can make sure that the land uses that are spelled out in the CDP match the zoning districts that we'll have in the zoning ordinance. No changes to the map will happen until the end of both of those processes. So like I said, we've had a really robust public process. We've had a lot of people come out to our meetings. The first one was on November 30th, and the most recent one was just last week. And we've got another one coming up on February 28th. There's a survey that goes with each meeting, so touching on different topics. And we did hear a little concern about the level of complexity and how technical the survey was with the first meeting. So what we did to adjust is we made a two-part survey for the second meeting. There are the baseline questions, and then there are the super technical questions. So if you're a zoning nerd like me, you can dig into those other questions if you want to. But the baseline questions still address all of the basic points of the zoning ordinance. So, what are we hearing from people? Well, there's a lot of concern about conservation areas. What areas should grow? What areas shouldn't? About saving trees, which we will address in the tree protection ordinance, which I'll get to here in just a minute. And there was a lot of discussion about zone strings. And everybody said, well, what is that? The idea there is you're going to separate out the form of the building, the design of the building, and the setbacks, and the use of the building. So you could say that the building form should look like a house, and it should be set back so far from the street, but the use should be business. So basically, you're separating the type of the building, the type of lot, how the lot's organized, and what's happening inside the building. So this allows more customization within the zoning ordinance so that we can make our neighborhoods look just exactly how we want them to, and make sure that we have all the tools to accommodate every housing type that we would like to have. So 2 more workshops coming up. Everybody mark your calendar. And if you can't come out to a meeting, remember we're doing these online, so you can participate online. And we have the surveys on the ATL zoning website, and you can always go back there and look at what happened at previous meetings. We're getting ready to start work on the tree protection ordinance. Well, I guess I shouldn't say that. We're already working on it. We know that we're going to have a lot of different groups in the room when we're doing this. So we wanted to start out in a place where everybody could agree on what we're doing and why we are there. So we went back through a lot of the city's adopted policy documents looking for what are our goals with regard to trees. Our urban ecology study tells us that we have 46.5% tree cover, and it has gone down over time. And so we felt that an overarching goal for this effort, no pun intended, would be to increase the tree canopy. And then we have some smaller goals that support that, listed here. So the process here for this phase 2 of the tree ordinance, we're supposed to be working on tree preservation and tree recompense fees. The first thing that we're doing is hiring a facilitator. We know that this will be a difficult process. It could be contentious, and we need a very strong facilitator. We also need somebody who is very well-versed in environmental issues, and most particularly in trees. So we are talking to a lot of different facilitators right now and working out what's the best skill set for us. And then we will move on to procurement to hire this person. And once we have that person in place, then we can get started with putting together the stakeholder group and scheduling the meetings. And we committed to do this at the beginning of this year, and we have been working on it. If you have questions about this, I invite you to reach out to me or to Andrew Walter or to Janet E. Sidafal, because we have been up to our eyeballs in this, and I think it's going to be a really, really good effort. That concludes my presentation. I'm here if you have questions, and so is about half my staff.
Thank you, Commissioner Prince. I know many of my colleagues will have questions, but I want to knock out a couple real quick, and then we'll move on to colleagues. And I'm going to try to take these in reverse order with your presentation as I was jotting notes. And the first one is related to the tree protection ordinance. I'm glad I had a chance to meet with you and your team last week or earlier this week. Time is a flat circle, so I don't know when we met. It was in the last few days. I do know that. But if you could just restate for the public just kind of y'all's vision of moving forward with the next round of the work sessions. One of the challenges and one of the things we've realized as we introduced the Phase 1 legislation last year is that folks are really hungry for more work to be done on this issue. We got asked to introduce additional changes and amendments, and one of the things I shared with those advocacy groups is, I've talked with the commissioner, I've talked with that team. There is a commitment to continue this work as part of a Phase 2 discussion. But I know you just briefed it, but if you could just say it again for the public record, because I know folks are watching, want to know what the next steps are.
So right now, we are talking to potential facilitators for the process. And we will have to go through the procurement process to hire them. So we're looking for somebody who is a very strong facilitator and is very knowledgeable about environmental issues. So it's kind of taking a while to find the right person. Sometimes we'll talk to somebody and they'll refer us to someone else. But just as soon as we have our facilitator in place, then we're going to start reaching out to the various stakeholders to talk with them and get the meetings scheduled. So that will happen in the first quarter of this year. We're moving towards it as quickly as we are able.
All those controversial items about recompense, about, look, I pronounce my words the way I want to. The tree trust fund, the invasives, those will be part of that conversation, correct?
So in this phase, we are to address tree preservation and the recompense fees. So those are the most important things that will absolutely be addressed in this phase. Maybe we'll touch on other things as well.
Thank you. Next question that I have is with regards to the zoning rewrite conversation. I appreciate you sharing the feedback about the meeting that took place a couple of weeks ago. I know there was a lot of excitement and just conversation around the first round of surveys, and I know y'all made some tweaks and introduced a new survey. Just kind of philosophically, I've been trying to navigate this conversation because I appreciate that y'all see the connection between the zoning rewrite and the CDP evaluation and the next steps with regards to the comprehensive development plan. My concern is that I know a lot of what will come out of that comprehensive development plan conversation, including our values and what we want to see in specific corridors. The implementation of that vision would be derived from the zoning conversation and what the specific code says, but the CDP conversation is happening after we have these initial meetings for the zoning conversation. So I was just curious if you could maybe, or someone from your team can talk through why it was timed in that way, or if y'all see that being any sort of risk or any challenge to our ability to have a set of documents that we don't come back to 3, 5, 10 years from now saying we probably could have or should have done it.
You know, it is a little unusual to start on the zoning ordinance first. And the thing that has been really well thought through here is how the two processes work together. So there won't be any map changes, no zoning map changes until after the CDP is finished, including the future land use map, because the future land use map informs the zoning ordinance. So think about it this way. The zoning districts that will be developed through the zoning ordinance rewrite process, those will be calibrated with the categories that we're going to use on the future land use map to make sure that they work together. But we won't make any changes to the zoning map until after the future land use map is adopted. So we work on the framework of the zoning ordinance first, then the framework of the CDP, the map of the CDP, that is the future land use map, and then we go to the zoning map. So it's a very well thought out process of working together like this. It's different from what you usually see, but I think it's going to work out really well.
And then that's, I guess, why I took a step back and thought about it a little bit more, because it is different from what we usually see. So I appreciate that clarity. And then you alluded to this in your presentation, but I just want to ask this every time DCP presents before CDHS, the STR enforcement. We're still on track for, I think we're still looking at March for enforcement. We're still on track
Yes,
for that.
sir, we're on track.
Okay. All right. And then my last question before I turn it over to colleagues. I did see that we had some pretty important departures from the DCP team over the last couple of weeks, folks who've been with the city for some time, and seeing kind of the development community's reaction to that and their concerns about their ability to do business in the city. Can you talk through whether or not y'all as a team share those same concerns, how hiring is going to fill those positions so that we can get these permits through on a timely basis, and whether or not you see any sort of broader concerns or risks based on some of the turnover we've had in the department? I know these are across all municipalities, across all localities that we're going through this kind of churn, but just want to get a feel that not only are we addressing it in a meaningful way, but what are we doing as a city to ensure that we address those gaps? Are we looking at shifting workloads or building in efficiencies to address, that staff turnover? But it's something that I've gotten a lot more concerned about, recognizing some of the national market conditions we're dealing with, our development community is dealing with that, on top of the things that they're having to navigate from a city perspective. So if the city can reduce as many barriers as possible, let them deal with the inflation rate, let them deal with the interest rates and things like cost of construction, but at the very least, the city should be able to help them navigate things more quickly. So that's not a burden in itself. So it's something I'm thinking about a lot as we navigate these market conditions, but I just wanted to see if you have any response or reflection to that, and see how the department's navigating that.
We had sort of a perfect storm of events come together. Some staffing and budget issues all at the same time. As you know, we are getting ready to undertake a pay and classification study. But I guess maybe it just didn't come soon enough for DCP. We had several people resign in the Office of Zoning and Development, particularly from the Special Administrative Permit team. And that's where the concern came from the development community. What we have done with this most recent batch of SAP applications that we've received is we pulled together a group of people who don't normally do SAPs to jump in and help out, all hands on deck, so to speak. I volunteered to review applications. So our staff, and we have a great staff, our staff jumped in to help to make this happen. Now, I know you've all heard that we have a permitting backlog. We do. We have about 2,400 applications. But we have a team of 8 people in the Office of Buildings who have stepped up together with our new Assistant Director, Tiana Leonard, to work on this backlog. And our goal is to clear an extra 300 applications per week. The staff is coming in for 4 hours on Saturdays to do this, to clear the backlog. We're working with the HR Commissioner, Commissioner Smith, on benchmarking all of our salaries so that we can make sure that we're paying competitively. To me, it's very important that we keep our staff, we keep our institutional memory, we keep these great employees who care so much and who work so hard. We need to keep them, we need to keep our best and brightest, and we need to be able to attract the best and brightest. I want you to know that we are advertising for the planner positions right now. We've benchmarked the salaries, and we're setting up interviews. This is going to happen pretty quickly. So we're working our absolute hardest to get this all addressed and to keep it moving.
Thank you. We're going to move on to Councilmember Lewis.
Thank you, Chair. My questions were very specific, based off what people have been talking to me about. Particularly right now, I live in District 12, and I'm representing District 12, the district with the most development in the city of Atlanta currently. And so when we talk about that, something that I've noticed and something that a lot of my people have brought to me, they say Lenox Mall was a forest before, and nobody ever said anything about it. And so as they were cutting down trees, because I'm speaking of like places like Pool Creek. Are you familiar with that land that's owned by the city of Atlanta?
I'm not familiar with that.
So in my lifetime, 35 years old, within the past 17 years, about 200 to 300 houses, units were in Pool Creek. My grandparents grew up in Pool Creek. Pool Creek right now looks like a forest. Right now it's all trees. And so people in my district have asked me, and they've always compared Lenox Mall, and they've sent me this picture of the picture that we always talk about is 1950s of Lenox Mall before it was built.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the 1950s, my parents lived in Pool Creek. 1960s, my folks lived in Pool Creek. 1970s, my folks moved in Pool Creek. 1980s, late 80s, my parents bought a house. My grandfather bought a house on Cleveland Avenue, but we also kept our property in Pool Creek. The airport bought a lot of Pool Creek property. A lot of stuff closed because of like the wind and the planes and stuff. But now Pool Creek is all trees. In 2005, that's when they tore it down. Between 2005, 2003, 2002, 5,000 people lived in the Pool Creek community. So right now it's all trees 2023. Lenox Mall was all trees at one point. People used to live in Pool Creek. What do we have to do? People in my community want to bring Pool Creek back. They don't think we should be planting a tree for every tree that grew up in that Pool Creek area. So what do we need to do? Because people used to live there in the name of affordable housing, right? Real affordable housing. When it was 10% of your income, or if you didn't have a job, you could still live here. My folks want that back in the right kind of way. And so in my district, we're working on bringing back Atlanta Housing Authority in a different way, like in the Techwood way, but in a mixed community way. So as we move forward, we don't want to have to plant a tree for every tree that we break in that Pool Creek where people used to live. Where people used to live, like my house I bought that I purchased, that I grew up in, that my family lost, that was torn down by the city of Atlanta. Trees existed in that space only, like they grew over a 10-year period. What do we do for folks like me who bought their properties back where people used to live? And there may not be an opportunity to plant a tree for every tree we tear down, or our folks can't afford to plant a tree where every tree went down there. What do we do for those folks?
You bring up a really important point, Councilmember Lewis. The majority of our trees are on single-family property, privately owned, single-family property. And so when a site is developed, we ask the developer, the builder, to replace the trees that are taken down. And sometimes they just don't fit on the property, right? Because now you've got a house. So what we try to do is offer opportunities to plant trees elsewhere. And I believe we have some programs to where, working with Trees Atlanta, that they will also help with planting the trees elsewhere. For example, you know that downtown we don't have very much tree cover, right? And we need street trees here. So that's one opportunity. I was speaking to a staff person from Central Atlanta Progress about this the other day. What are y'all doing with the street trees? Planting in parks, planting in the areas that we have purchased specifically for these areas. And there may be a way to subsidize those. Now, for the tree planting standards, I would encourage everyone to participate in the process and let your feelings be known on this.
So I'm glad you said that because I see that a lot. Trees Atlanta is now in District 12, right? And so what I've seen is I'm riding down Pryor Road. One side is District 12, the other side is District 1. The one side is all, if you get around Lakewood Amphitheater, right now all we see is trees. And so I'm very nervous. I asked my staffers to look into this. Are people cutting down trees in Buckhead and planting trees in District 12? Right? Because nowhere in the world, I know we got the most development going on in the city of Atlanta. And so I know, but we have places where it was zoned for affordable housing that are now tree parks. And if you ride down Pryor Road, you'll see it's beautiful. Next level beautiful. But my concern is that the folks in Buckhead or Oakland City, the north part of Oakland City, I only use that, or Mechanicsville, right? Let's say, or downtown. Let's say you live in Ansley Park and you built a new building, you just tore down something, you built up a new building. And you want to, are they able to tear down trees in Ansley Park and then plant trees on Pryor Road in District 12? And that's their way of getting, not a skirting the tree ordinance per the district, or is that a way to, is that equal? I mean, not equal, you can't determine equal. Is that happening?
So what they'll do if they can't fit the trees onto their site, they're going to pay recompense fees. And then the trees will be planted elsewhere. And it's just a question of where will they fit? Where do we have an opportunity to plant them? It might be on the same street. It might be on the other side of town.
Could be District 12.
Could be.
So thank you. That was a question I asked, and they told me they weren't doing that. I was told that a person couldn't tear down Lenox Mall and cut down 1,000 trees because, to me, Pool Creek is affordable housing. To me, in my lifetime, I'm 35 years old, one of the youngest council members after Liliana Bakhtiari, one of the youngest council members that we have. And in my lifetime, my parents and my cousins all lived in Pool Creek. So to me, if a person is allowed to cut down trees at Lenox Mall and replant them in Pool Creek, that's an issue. I think they should replant them where they, in the same district at least, so that we can feel the same air quality. Because it ain't hot where I'm from. We ain't having no tree issues. As a matter of fact, we have trees coming up where people used to live. So I appreciate you.
Councilmember Lewis, I do not have the tree protection ordinance memorized yet. I do sleep with it under my pillow every night. But I agree with you. The trees ought to be planted in the neighborhood where they were removed.
I appreciate you, and I'm happy that we got you recorded saying that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Lewis. Councilmember Winston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Commissioner Prince, for coming and giving this update. First, I want to start on page 4. You use an acronym SLA when you talk about permits, standard versus express. Can you tell me what that acronym means? Sorry, I'm not familiar.
It stands for Service Level Agreement. And at one point in time, the Department of City Planning agreed to provide different types of permits in these agreed-upon timeframes. Now, those service level agreements were based on the level of staffing that we had at that time. So I did do a little historical research to try to find out when that was and what the staffing level was, and it just proved to be a big waste of time. I couldn't find it. So what I am proposing that we do is, once we get this backlog cleared and we get fully staffed, that we revisit those service level agreements so that I can tell you realistically what we're able to do, how quickly we can turn around permits, because it just doesn't make any sense for me to agree to something that doesn't fit with the staffing level or the level of development activity that we have right now.
And based on our current staffing levels, what is the current lead time for standard building permits?
I have that right here. It's, for the standard building permit, it's 10 business days, and I'm sure you realize that we are exceeding that every so often.
Yes, and so I'm concerned about a lot of things, and I'm telling you, this comes from a place of really wanting you all to succeed, knowing the staffing levels that you all have. The emails that I get from constituents, I'm not seeing 10-day turnarounds for business permits. I will say that the lead time seems to be triple of that, if not longer for those. I'm looking at the different levels. 2019, you were doing 25 permits a day. You're on target right now for fiscal year 2023 to be somewhere between 20 to 21 permits a day based on the numbers that I'm seeing here. Then you're adding a 2,400 backlog, which increases that number to 60 a day, plus the additional 20 that you're already doing based on your staffing levels. To me, that just doesn't seem sustainable for an already overtaxed, department that you already have to be able to maintain this. And so, one, I think it's important to give realistic timelines to folks emailing us to say this 10-day number is not realistic. And to say this is what the numbers or the number of days should be, I think is something that we really have to work on doing because, we're getting emails, we're helping trying to fish this information for our constituents. And now we're increasing the amount of work and back and forth with already overtaxed, staffers who are having to try to figure out and chase these things down. So to me, it just seems like more transparency and trying to figure out how we get to a number that works is going to help us all in the long run.
Yes, sir, I completely agree with you. And we are going to figure out what is a realistic number just as soon as we clear this backlog. And believe me, we've had one Saturday session and we cleared almost 300 permits in 4 hours.
So that being the case, how long do you think it will take to kind of clear through the backlog that you currently have?
So the goal is 8 weeks' time.
So 8 weeks, we should be done, or at least caught back up where we should be.
To be caught up, yes, sir.
Okay. And then, I know one of the things that I heard glowingly about you when you were brought on was about being able to work through processes. I think that the process we have now for building permits is not very equitable at all. It's an arduous process. I talk to people who need work done for their homes. I live in a historic district where, quite frankly, it's confusing to people when they move into the neighborhood. They start working on their homes. They have no idea what the requirements are. There's no, one-stop shop place that says put your address in, here are the requirements in terms of being able to acquire a building permit. I would love to see that be fixed in the long run. Obviously, you got some more pressing issues to work on, but I think if we can make this process a little bit more equitable, especially for those in underserved communities who just, look at this process and they walk away from it because it's just too daunting to be able to even step into it. Even if you look at lead times, I've talked to people who have started the permit process and their contractors leave because it takes too long for them to be able to get to work. And so, these are all things that are stymieing growth for the city of Atlanta. We look at the mayor's, very ambitious goal of 20,000 affordable units. And, to me, it doesn't look like it's going to be feasible to hit those numbers if we can't keep up with the demand of building permits in the city of Atlanta, which is something that I'm passionate about, that I care about, and I want to make sure that we continue to let people that, even want to just, fix up or maintain their homes be able to do that.
I've got Director Pace here with me, and he can speak in more detail about the things that we're doing to make building permitting easier. Greg, do you want to talk about Development Services team?
Good afternoon, council members, council president. First and foremost, I want to clear up a couple of things. Service level agreement, SLAs, that 10-day SLA is 10 days for us to provide the first review. It's not for the full permit. So there's usually iterations of comments that go back and forth with the design professional. So I don't want people to get hung up thinking that they'll get a permit in 10 days unless they have a perfect set of plans. And there are other offices that we deal with as well, other departments that also have that 10-day lead time. And we're trying to get everybody on the same SLA, so that's part of what she's speaking of in terms of getting our SLAs. Part of our process, what we're working on now is a new development services team, which is identifying and keeping track of any projects that have been stagnant. So that 2,400 number that you're speaking of, it is a backlog of stagnant permits. It's not so much as permits that haven't been looked at. They are either stagnant for several reasons. One, maybe the architect, design professional has not reviewed it or looked at it, the comments that were given to them. Maybe there was an email snag, and so in that 10-day process, when someone actually gave them some comments, it went to an incorrect email because they automatically go out through our Acela database system. If for some reason they never received the comments, that architect is working on another project, 30 days go by, 45 days go by, they haven't even thought to come back and find out what's going on. This team is working on all of those projects, contacting not only those design professionals, the applicant, as well as the plan reviewer that may be the one that looked at the project to ensure that they're still wanting to continue with the project and move it forward. So that's what we've been working on, and we started this exercise probably a little less than a year ago, and we've cleared some, I want to say 6,000 to 7,000 backlog projects. And so it's not that they weren't reviewed, it's just that they were stagnant. So in looking at what you're saying in 20 to 25 a day, et cetera, that's a totally different number. The ones that the 20 to 25 a day are the ones that we're actually moving through the process and getting those permits issued. So I did want to make sure that we cleared that up so there's no confusion as to 2,400 projects that are sitting there that no one touched.
And to be fair, also, I know that there's a portion of the permitting process that sits within Department of Watershed Management, that is site development, that also gets hung up a lot, and a lot of times you all get blamed for that. What's the coordination going on with DWM in terms of making sure that you're also fixing that part of the permit process, which in my opinion, you know, we need to figure out whether that needs to be all in one place or not.
That's accurate. And we have been working with the administration as well in the whole permitting improvement process. And part of that, phasing that part of it, is getting all of the departments together, which we had several meetings over the past several months in regards to how do we come together and be one city, one department, one entity that issues these permits. And so as a result of that, we found some ways in which we're going to improve that, and those are aligning all of those SLAs together to make sure everybody's held accountable, as well as all of the administrative functions that are performed within the Office of Buildings, and we have someone to hold accountable to those SLAs, which we've been working with those commissioners to ensure that that is going to be the case and that they are adhering to that. So we're working collaboratively together to pull all this, to put it out there, and we should be launching fairly soon. We're going to work through this backlog for the next 8 weeks, and we're working with the HR commissioner as far as personnel that we need to bring on board, and we'll start launching and phasing that in.
Well, I definitely appreciate it. Like I said, I think the goal here for me is just to make sure that we're being transparent and open about the process, and even if, you know, it's not what people want to hear, at least we're being open and honest about it. You know, obviously I don't want to put expediters out of business, but this shouldn't be a game that only people that can afford expediters are able to get permits. It's got to be equitable. It's got to be a process that, you know, anyone in the city of Atlanta that wants to upgrade or either have a building permit can do it in a way that makes it that is easy for them to be able to do that.
I totally agree, and again, I think once we launch and everything gets the dust settled, I think it'll be part of the process that we put forth and make it more seamless, much easier for us to work through. We all share in that responsibility, and it's not just watershed management. There are other departments as well that are all tied into it, and they're all stakeholders and are committed to making sure we ensure a much more seamless process.
Right. But definitely appreciate the commitment of everyone that's working overtime to try to catch up with this backlog. And I know that everyone that I interact with at DCP, I know are hard individuals that they're doing their best. So thank you very much.
No problem, and I concur. We have the best staff in the city.
Thank you, Councilmember Winston. Councilmember Bakhtiari.
Yes, thank you. First of all, I want to say Councilmember Winston's a lot nicer than I am. I personally want to put expediters out of business because I want us to be so good that there isn't this tradition that that's occurred in Atlanta where, as he said, you either get expedited or you're out of luck. Quick question: is DCP or OOB tied into small business permitting at all, or is that completely on finance?
We have been partnering with the administration and the small business in regards to permitting, business licensing, and those things, yes.
Okay. No, I was just asking because, I mean, that is another piece that we are dealing with, obviously. One of the complaints I've consistently heard from the public, and this is also on all of us and the administration, is we've heard the words one-stop shop now for I don't know how many years. And it is it's an ongoing theme, is why aren't these permitting processes in one place? And I know that we're backlogged, and one of the questions I'm going to have tomorrow during FEC, when the personnel paper comes up from the administration about their staffing for their new strategy office, is why is it that, was there communication when some of our best people were taken out of DCP and put in the mayor's office? Was there any communication with our interim commissioner or incoming commissioner? And if so, and allegedly only 20% of their 20% of their responsibility right now is working with with our senior advisor, and 80% is allegedly with DCP. I would need proof of that, because it is troubling to me that people are being pulled out of offices and moved and relocated out of an office that's already bottlenecked and needs, and is arguably given some of the biggest responsibility in the city. It is troubling to me that people are being taken out of that department for another department without filling that backlog in. So one of the things I would really like is, one, to ask you, are you still working with people who haven't been moved out of the senior advisor into the senior advisor's office? And if not, how do we fill those positions?
We are still working with them, but it's my understanding that they will move once the personnel paper is passed.
Yes, that is accurate. But they were, and I will ask the administration more about that tomorrow. In the meantime, I would really appreciate it if we could have a flow chart, like I would like to understand between DCP and OOB what our current staffing levels are, where we have openings, how many of those positions are fully funded, and how do we get you all more support. I mean, that goes all the way back to David back there, who I know we promised we were going to get another arborist position in to assist with you. And the responsibility that we're placing upon DCP and OOB, like I love the mayor's initiative around affordable housing, but we also have more housing booming in the city than ever before. It is not, I want this office to be set up for success, and right now I feel like we are setting you up for failure by putting all these responsibilities on you and expecting a turnaround in the city. And of course we want more housing here, but I don't feel like that y'all have been equipped with the best support possible. So I'd really like to understand what's happening in the office, have those flow charts, understand the positions that need filling, understand how many more positions you would like so that we can properly advocate for this department. And I mean, Councilmember Winston asked a lot of really great questions, so he pretty much took up all of mine. And I also wanted to ask the overtime that is happening, what is the cost of that on DCP's budget? Like how much?
I'd have to check that for you and get that information to you. Also, if you want to discuss org charts and staffing, I'm happy to meet with you as well.
Okay. I mean, live in my district, I'll just drive down the street.
Come on over.
But that sounds great. And I just wanted to ask really quickly, so we do not have the next tree commission meeting planned yet because we're still waiting on hiring someone to help with mediation?
We absolutely have to have the facilitator in place before we can set the schedule.
And do we know how long that process is going to take through procurement to get them confirmed?
I don't know. It depends on if we can use, it's a special procurement that we're going to need for this, and I haven't been through that before, so I'm not sure how long it will take.
Okay. Understood. Just as you can understand, I think Councilmember Dozier gets the brunt of tree commission questions and tree protection questions. So just so that we will be able to actually give answers to the people that are calling and emailing pretty nonstop, understandably. And the last piece was Councilmember Lewis brought up a question about the tree piece, about the replantings. And one of my concerns about waiting on this is, one that's been brought up in our discussions, is that we are running out of places to plant trees. We are running out of places to plant canopy. I'm not talking crepe myrtles, I'm not talking small trees, I'm talking actual canopy. And one of the reasons, arguably, that you could say that one of the reasons Atlanta has not been drastically affected yet by climate change that is surrounding other municipalities and other states is because of our canopy. And I think one of the important things, like, what worries me sometimes about the conversation is the either or. There can absolutely be housing, because we have a housing deficit map that I know DCP has been working on how much our population growth is projected to grow over the next 20 years, how much housing needs to be added to each neighborhood, because no one neighborhood should carry the burden solely. And by that measure, I would like DCP to know that I'm going to be advocating for more than just single family. The conversation around single family troubles me because over half our city is already zoned for it, and we are literally manufacturing our homeless population. We are pushing people out. There is a massive wealth gap, and we need more housing by the day. So anything we can do to streamline that process, but also keep that in mind when we're talking about housing. We are not building fast enough for the people that are coming here, and due to that, we are putting more people on the street. So I think it's important to always remember public colleagues, staff alike, we can have both. And because of green space we need for sustainability purposes, because Atlanta is not prepared at all for the oncoming climate change, and we absolutely need more housing, and we can absolutely do both. And I'm looking forward to figuring that out with DCP and also getting you all the staff members you need to accomplish the really ambitious goals we set before you.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
Councilmember Bakhtiari. Councilmember Westmoreland.
What's up?
Hello.
Good to see you. Thank you for coming. A couple quick things. One, I want to make a public thank you to the members of your team who are working literal and figurative overtime to help clear out backlogs. So thank you to everyone in this room and anybody working in your department right now. Two, I had a question, Councilmember Winston kind of touched on it a little bit around I was going to ask how big was our backlog if there was one 6 months ago. And it sounds like the answer is it was bigger, and we've been chipping away at it, and we're coming up to the end of it, which is wonderful. And then third was a more specific question about the literal number of vacancies in the department, and I think I'll just take that conversation offline for the sake of time. So I will hit you up to chat about that, and thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. So I think that concludes questions from colleagues. Thank you so much, Commissioner Prince, and to the DCP team. We love you all. We just ask some hard questions from time to time. All right. Next up, we have Commissioner Deborah Linen with the Department of Grants and Community Development for their quarterly update. Good to see you once again, Commissioner Linen.
Great to see you. Please keep the love from me, too. Good afternoon, Chair, and good afternoon, council members. It's been a while since I've been before you, and so I must say, how about them dogs? The version of the presentation you have before you is inclusive and is comprehensive, just not as comprehensive as what I have before me. And unfortunately, I did not get that to Jared in time. So while I'm going to share a lot of additional information, if you want it in writing, please let me know. The first few slides are really just redundant of what I presented to you in the past. But just as a reminder to our public, the Department of Grants and Community Development is tasked with serving the city's most vulnerable residents. We rehabilitate homes, we provide tenant-based rental assistance, we assist with building new homes and purchasing new homes, and we are very, very committed to assisting with combating homelessness. Additionally, we support the administration of grants for many of the mayor's key priorities, and those are listed in Part 2. At any given point, we manage between 100 and 150, and that's actually increasing, 125, 150 or more projects. And we are responsible for deploying more than $30 million in grant funds. City of Atlanta is an entitlement community. That means we receive our own annual allocation of HUD entitlement grants. Those include community development block grants. They average $6 to $7 million a year. The Home Investment Partnership Program, that averages $2 million a year. The Emergency Solutions Grant, that's approximately $600,000 a year. And then the Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS, known as HOPWA, and that average was $22 million a year. And due to HOPWA modernization and the federal government's formula, that for the City of Atlanta was reduced to about $13 million. And that was completely out of our control. It was forthcoming and had been forthcoming for some years. We also operate the Section 8 program. We are currently still working through closing the Neighborhood Stabilization Program. HUD no longer funds NSP, but the City of Atlanta's program is not yet closed. And then recently, we've been tasked with assisting other city departments with their competitive grant applications. These are just metrics that we apply to both our NOFA process, awarding these funds, and then making sure as we are monitoring agencies that are awarded that they are meeting these metrics for CDBG and ESG, and then for HOPWA and HOME. All right, the main point. Last year, the last time I presented before you, I was able to provide year-to-date amounts that the Department of Grants and Community Development had paid in subrecipients' requests for reimbursements. So we're starting fresh, and now we'll be looking at 2023 numbers. However, for ESG, we closed out last year at $6,059,175.62. Those were the funds that the city reimbursed to its ESG subrecipients, and then we turn around and reimburse ourselves. So we pay them, and then we draw down funds. For January through this Monday, we have reimbursed a total of we have paid reimbursement requests totaling $245,654.18. For the community development block grants, we closed out 2022 calendar year with $3,594,544.63 in payments to subrecipients. And for January 2023, we have paid reimbursement requests totaling $140,060.55. For HOPWA, we closed out 2022 with $12,619,641.69. That's what we paid in reimbursement requests to our subrecipients, and for HOPWA, those subrecipients are known as project sponsors. For January, we have paid $576,175.02. This particular slide is to provide an update to you on drawdowns. So what you often hear, or what you used to hear from subrecipients was, I haven't gotten my reimbursement, I haven't gotten my reimbursement. Of course, with the changes that we implemented last year, I haven't heard from any of you recently, so I hope that translates to you're not having heard from subrecipients. But reimbursing them timely is only part of the process. It's only part of the city becoming compliant with HUD regulations. The city, unlike most other jurisdictions, pays these reimbursements from general funds or cash pool, and then we turn around and pay ourselves. Most jurisdictions do that back to back because they can't front the funds. And so we are still working through drawing down our funds. And I thought it was very important that you all have this information. And the additional information that I mentioned before is far more detailed in the paper versions that I have here. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to go through this a little bit so that as you all receive questions, you'll understand what this particular slide is. Across the top, I've listed the funding years. So FY15, FY16, 17 through 22. HUD's program year is different from the city's, so just keep that in mind. CV stands for the COVID funds that we received in addition to our regular allocations. And ARP, of course, is the American Rescue Plan that applies to HOME. So we received CDBG, ESG, and HOPWA CV, but HOME is ARP. So HOME ARP was the additional allocation to assist with the pandemic. And then down the left column, you'll see, of course, the actual entitlement programs that I mentioned early on. CDBG and the number 7 next to it says that for each year that we are funded, we have 7 years to expend and draw down the total amounts that we are funded. ESG is 2 years, HOPWA is 3, and HOME is 8. Now, I'll just give an example or two. HOPWA's, well, we'll say CDBG CV. The city received $4,209,808 in CDBG COVID funds. We have until September 2028 to fully expend and draw those funds. So that's what the 928 is for. If you skip over to FY22, the city received in CDBG funds $7,004,069. for FY22. That's the most recent allocation of CDBG funds that the city received as an entitlement community. We have until 2029 to draw down those funds. They have to be contracted. Our subrecipients have to expend the dollars, and then we draw it down. As a reminder, gentlemen, the City of Atlanta does not engage in providing the services. So as much as our subrecipients rely on us to reimburse them quickly and to contract quickly, we really rely on them to provide those services and expend the funds so we can avoid recapture. ESG, in the CV column, you'll see that for ESG, which is good on average for 2 years, we've received 3 different allocations of ESG funds, and that's really a blessing as the ESG funds focus primarily on homelessness. The first allocation of ESG CV funds was for $2,163,228. We have until September of this year to fully expand and draw. If I'm not mistaken, on our end, in Oracle, we have fully expended, but HUD doesn't really care about Oracle. HUD cares about IDIS, and then IDIS, we're still working through making sure that our numbers correspond with theirs and that we've reconciled. The city received a second allocation of ESG CV funds in the amount of $10,965,024. We have until March 2024 to draw down those funds. And then because we were one of the jurisdictions nationally that was both properly and timely expending ESG CV funds, HUD asked if the city would take an additional ESG CV allocation, and of course we said yes right now. And so HUD allocated in CV3 funds $1,750,161, and we have until August 2024 to expend those funds. So I think the rest of it will be pretty self-explanatory. But again, I have these additional numbers and detail in the paper form. I do want to stress, and I will actually go through home really quickly, that as much as you all have heard from subrecipients about HOPWA, you probably have not heard too much about home because the city's home program has been somewhat dormant. Not for long, but we have a plan in place. However, I just want to make sure it's on your radar that the home funds are coming to their expiration for the earlier allocations, but we have a plan in place. For instance, home ARP is not at risk. We were just awarded that. We have until September of 2030 to fully expend those and draw those funds. But if you look over one column to FY15, the city received $1,489,521 in FY15 funds. Those funds expired this year, and we've been working many late nights to make sure that we get as much of that expended and drawn as possible. The goal is always 100%, but those funds were received in 2015, and we're just getting to the point of addressing it. So some of these things should have already been done, but nevertheless, here we are. The next slide talks about the ongoing plan of action, and you've seen this many times, but I've got some good updates for you today. In the past 2 years, we focused on 4 goals primarily. The first, of course, was reimbursing our subrecipients quickly. The second was contracting with our subrecipients faster than we've been doing. The third was monitoring the subrecipients after their contracts were executed. And then we had to focus on staffing. So, of course, you've heard the good news about reimbursements. At least part 1, we're reimbursing much faster. And we're also drawing faster, but we got to catch up. And again, HUD is only concerned about what they see in IDIS, not what we see on our side in Oracle. Executing the contracts has also come a long way as we've worked with law and with procurement. The issue for DGCD as it relates to procurement is we're not usually dealing with general funds. And the procurement rules have really proven to be a handcuff for us. HUD's position is, here is our procurement rules, but you must apply whichever is more stringent between what HUD mandates and what the city mandates. The City of Atlanta's procurement is a lot more stringent than HUD's. And although the intention is for general funds, it has over the years been applicable to grant funds, and we're really grateful for Law's assistance and procurement's willingness to help us work through that. Monitoring has not taken place in the city for years, and I'll be really frank with you, I didn't know that that was an option before I got here. And so we have worked really diligently to monitor every funded program and every funded project sponsor and subrecipient, and that's been our saving grace. So one of our primary saving graces with HUD that we are now monitoring, and where we find that we were non-compliant or that subrecipients were non-compliant, we immediately take action and self-impose those actions. We were monitored by HUD just last year, and for the first time in a very long time, we had no HOPWA findings, and they were pleased to see that where we discovered mistakes or even malfeasance, we documented it in writing, and we put in a plan of action, and we shared it with them. So again, transparency is vital here. But that staffing goal number 4, we continue to work on vacant positions, key positions. We filled most of them, but of course, keeping and retaining staff, I think, as you all mentioned, is problematic across the board. But we have come a long way, and we're not where we were. I will say that this particular DGCD group of employees, teammates, are the most committed that I've worked with since I've been here. We were looking for capacity, competency, and commitment. And more than ever, we have that in our team. And so I'm grateful for that, and I want to take this opportunity to let you know that the work does not end at 5 or 6 p.m., and they are willing to engage for the sake of helping our residents. We've, of course, resolved the backlog, and what used to take 144 days or more is now consistently at 30 days or less. Consistently, we are reimbursing our subrecipients at 30 days or less for those who properly submit their reimbursements. Some people like us have had turnover, and we're assisting with training. We're working with outside subcontractors and contractors, and we're making sure that we are receiving ongoing training so we don't fall behind and that new staff is brought up to speed, but we're also providing training to our subrecipients so that they can stay abreast of all their necessary compliance. And we are, of course, continuing to work with HUD and CPD. CPD has been a great advocate of ours, and we want to keep that. We've had notice of funding availability shifts. We've separated our applications, thereby making it easier to understand and encouraging new applicants. We have awarded all of our outstanding funds except for home. And home, again, dates all the way back to funds that we received for FY15. But by the end of next week, even that's going to be caught up. And I say that with a smile because that's been a long time coming. I'm very excited about it, and we're committed to expending those funds and not giving anything back to HUD. They don't want it back. We don't want to give it back. Certainly the need exists. We are conducting the drawdowns more regularly and more timely. But again, on this slide, under conduct drawdowns, I want to stress to you that for HOPWA 19, those funds expire March of this year. That is in 2 months. We have released the NOFA. We had some subrecipients rescind portions of their contracts, and our HOPWA project sponsors gave money back. Now, that's not because the city doesn't have a need. That is partially because they received so much other funding that was easier to expend. It's also partially because we spent all of last year improving our reimbursement processes, but of course, project sponsors have been negatively impacted, and we've improved our contracting, but again, they have been negatively impacted. Keep in mind, the city itself cannot expend HOPWA funds. We need the project sponsors to provide the services. So we had to move really quickly to reallocate and reaward those funds to other project sponsors, and we are asking HUD to give us more time so we can give project sponsors more time to utilize those funds and then draw it down. We've not received our response yet. That's forthcoming. And as I shared, we are actively working to award all of the home funds, make sure they are properly spent, and then we draw it down. Home is the most stringent of our entitlement programs, not HOPWA. HOPWA has flexibility that home laughs at. So it's really important to us that that monitoring and the training is strictly adhered to as it relates to all of our programs, but particularly home. And then I'd mentioned to you all and FEC in the past that we needed better grant management software, and we have contracted with Neighborly. Neighborly is not new to working with HUD entitlement grantees, and not only is my team really excited about it, but so are our project sponsors and subrecipients who have also become familiar with Neighborly. So again, I provided more detail in my verbal presentation than what you may have had before you. I have copies with the additional information, but I will gladly answer your questions as best as I can. And Deputy Commissioner Nicole Barnes has joined us.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Lana. You got jokes. And I believe the copies that you have were emailed to us, so we should have that digitally, so I think we're good there. I do have a few questions before I turn it over to colleagues. The first one, the 2019 funds that are at risk. I'm just curious, how much are we talking about from a dollar amount standpoint?
On the IDIS side, they see $16 million. It's really closer to $14 million, and most of the $14 million is connected to HOPWA CAP. And HOPWA CAP means that our subrecipients who were awarded those funds are looking for properties that they can buy, so the market is a huge factor. And the reason that's so important for us is if our project sponsors, not if, when our project sponsors identify and purchase these properties, they stay permanently affordable. So we don't have to worry about the market rate and losing properties. So that's what the purpose of the funds are right now. The team has worked on multiple contingency plans so that we will not be losing $14 million in HOPWA. The residents cannot afford that. However, that's where we are right now. The contingency plans, I don't want to share right now because CPD watches these meetings, and I'd rather they not get excited about the contingency plans. The better plan is for us to use those funds and purchase properties. They just can't get that done by March.
But it sounds like we're not the bottleneck, but we're working with.
We were part of the bottleneck. I want to be very clear about that. You know, reimbursements are caught up, but when I was before you this time last year, I couldn't say that. So I can't say, oh,
Right.
It's not on us. But right now, we're making a really great case as to why we should be provided additional time, but also actively preparing just in case.
Well, and I guess that segues to a separate question I was going to ask a little later, but I'll ask that now. One of the emails that I did get back from HOPWA Advocate, so yes, we have not been blowing your inbox up because our inboxes haven't been blowing up. I did have one advocate reach out asking about whether we can lean on the administration for additional support and moving that program forward. And one of the things that he brought up was the waiting list for HOPWA is still pretty expensive. What are we doing to address that wait list? Are some of the work that y'all are doing to address this HOPWA 19 challenge, would that potentially lead into addressing that? If you can talk through or unpack that a little bit as far as wait list, but also whether or not 19 will have any impact there.
If I were willing to let you all know that I was a betting woman, I put $100 that I know who sent you that email, but I don't bet. So our advocates are very different in their knowledge base from our project sponsors. The project sponsors are doing the work. They know these numbers. Why? Because they give it to us. So they know what's going on, they know where the funds are, they know where their awarded funds are specifically. The advocates, though, focus primarily on just the big picture. The project sponsors know exactly what's going on with the amounts that they have been awarded. So for instance, subrecipient A has $7 million of FY19 funds. Subrecipient A has submitted reimbursements for 4 of those $7 million. Subrecipient A knows that they still have $3 million left to expend. HOPWA Advocate may not know that. So the HOPWA Advocate is like, City of Atlanta, what are you doing? Now, what we have started doing under Mayor Dickens' administration is having a much more robust HOPWA advisory meeting that Jennifer Keenan leads. And we've answered that particular set of questions at least 3 different times in that group, in writing, and in other settings. One of their primary concerns is Hopwood modernization. So I'm willing to bet that that's not just any 1 year. But what's going to happen? Will the administration help with that reduction in funding? The mayor met with them themselves, and I think you were there, Councilmember Dozier. And so that commitment that he made, actually, we just provided an update yesterday. We are still moving forward. I think part of the confusion for some of our advocates is, if the city is not specifically saying as part of its affordable housing, this is for Hopwood, they get a little nervous. But every affordable housing opportunity is also an opportunity for Hopwood recipients. No one is discriminating and saying you can't participate in this because you already get Hopwood. As a matter of fact, most of the time, no one knows if you're getting Hopwood. So the city has committed to ensure that those funds are accessible. The mayor is pulling together an advisory group, and maybe they've spoken with you about that. We provided that update. Separate from Hopwood modernization, what DGCD has committed to is every single dollar that we can put towards capital projects. That's what we'll do. The more we can own the properties, the more we can control rent. And so then it stays permanently affordable, and then we don't have folks being put out or evicted or receive letters that says it's better for us to go market rate because we can make so much more money. So there are multiple steps. And if you want, Councilman Dozier, I can forward some of the communications to you so that maybe you can refer that person back, or you'll just have the additional information yourself.
That would be
And
great.
all of the CDHS council members.
That would be great. And then just, I guess just while on the top of that, one of the other asks they did have was, as part of that advisory group, if your department could commit to sending monthly or quarterly profit and loss related to Hopwood, if that's feasible. I'm just curious if
There's no such thing.
Okay.
And we've told them that. I don't know what that means. I will tell you that at Hopwood Advisory, every month, not only do we provide the numbers that I've shared with you, we give them CDBG, ESG, and home so that you see all of these things are ongoing. The more you know, the better informed you are to teach others. There's no such thing, profit loss. So we have asked, what do you mean, what do you want? And we haven't received that. But whatever we have, certainly we'll share.
Okay. Just doing my part to poke the bear a little
I
bit.
appreciate it.
Just going back to the conversation about home, if you can maybe talk through why we're just now getting to addressing those challenges. If I know Hopwood has been a priority in terms of the efforts that your department has taken to pay folks back and things like that, but what drove the process to where we're only getting to the home issue now?
I anticipated this question and I thought about the most professional answer, but really, quite honestly, I don't know why we didn't touch 15 funds. It's 2023. Now, it's not that we didn't award any of it. We didn't award all of it. And much like with some of our other funds, some contracts were awarded and the recipients didn't move. And with home, you're a developer. They did not move. But I didn't come until 2020. It feels like 2000. But I didn't come until 2020. However, just looking at the emails or the reimbursement requests or the dormancy of some of these funds, I suspect that some of our reimbursement and contracting concerns of old impacted that. Again, home is very different, though. And if one step doesn't move, it reminds me a little bit of what planning was referring to. Sometimes something lives with someone and it doesn't move and everyone kind of forgets about it. You don't get to forget about home because when it expires, it's a lot less flexible than other programs. I think, of course, that another factor was turnover. And then when this department was created, not everything moved over to DGCD. There's still times where Deputy Commissioner Barnes and I will get an email, and that email is the first time we knew of any particular need or of any particular conversation, because then they send the thread. So we're still discovering things that we didn't know. The good news, council member, is we know now exactly how much we have, and we know where it's going, and we have existing relationships with most of the people who will be awarded those funds. We have, with the compliance director, a solid plan forward on how to monitor all of the funds that will be awarded, and the program staff have significantly shifted and improved their contract management skills and performance and expectation so that we will no longer deal with, I didn't know that existed. At this point, that's no longer an option. So while I can't really answer why we still have FY15 and FY16 funds, I can tell you that we have a plan in place to make sure we spend it faster than we have.
And then just my last question is, as we look towards the future, I know with the priorities that you have and the key programs that you've listed, a lot of them are tied to housing programs or HUD and Section 8 and federal recovery funds for neighborhood stabilization. I know there's a plethora of other federal programs geared towards improving quality of life in our communities, geared towards making our communities more stable. And as a council, in previous councils, there have been stated goals around reducing energy burden, around ending pedestrian fatalities. So you have this Vision Zero initiative, or even making Atlanta as sustainable as possible through renewability goals or efforts, and make sure the city's power comes from clean energy, those sorts of things. I wonder if there's an opportunity to align your department's goals and the programs that we're applying for with those. I know the mayor has his own priorities, but I know council has priorities as well. We would love to see the things that we're advocating for reflected in the grants that we're applying for, the RFIs we're responding to. Just last week, Department of Energy had an energy efficiency and conservation block grant program. I think it's $430 million for localities across the country. Is geared towards reducing energy burden in people's households. And as I see these things, the warm fuzzy I would love to have is that there are cities applying for these programs, and we're bringing these funds into our communities. I know, we're still standing up our Justice 40 commission and initiative related to identifying these programs and finding suitable projects for these funding streams. But that's just one example. So as you think about kind of the next generation of, this presentation, I know the competitive grants key program, where it's like other federal grants, the more you can call out those programs that we're applying for and how those funds are being leveraged, I think that'll be helpful for the story we're telling back to our constituents that, even though we're a $750 million city, we're leveraging those local funds for federal programs to bring that back in our communities. But the more specific we can be about what programs those are, the better that I think the story is, that, we know this work is important. Let's get it funded. Let's get it done. And so that's just kind of my ask, as we have these programs come up. Definitely apply for them, but also let us know what we're applying for so we can take that back to our constituents. All right. Questions from colleagues? Councilmember Bakhtiari.
I have a very random question that I've been thinking about. Is there, I see your face looking hesitant.
Bracing myself.
I'm, first of all, astounding job as always. But I was curious, I had been interested in doing a district grant writer, and I was wondering if we found grants that could be district specific, would we be able to work with the grants department to try to apply for those, or would we need to get our own grant writer?
If you can get your own grant writer, that would be great, because while I have one grant writer on staff, none of our duties actually include helping people write grants. And as you can imagine, she's spread so thin, but that doesn't mean we wouldn't be able to assist. I just don't know that we would have the time to commit to really write a good, thorough grant. And then she would have to research what makes that particular grant successful, so yes.
Yeah. We are thinking of bringing on our own, but I would love it if there was an opportunity to work in tandem just for general advice and guidance.
Yes. Now that we do, because in our competitive compliance division of compliance, or subdivision of the compliance office, questions are asked. We're trying to go from just hitting submit, just hitting the button that says you can submit, to being more useful, more helpful, and connecting everyone so that this grant is available, and we can let you know, hey, this is a grant that you may be interested in. So we're moving more in that direction.
Understood. Thank you.
That's it. All right. Thank you.
No other questions from colleagues. Thank you so much, Commissioner Lon. Thank you so much, Commissioner. Wasn't so bad.
Not at all.
And go Dogs. All right, colleagues, that takes us to legislation communications, I believe is the next item, and we have a couple of things to hold.
Item number 1 is 23C 5008, a communication from council members Loliana Bakhtiari, District 5, Alex Wan, District 6, Howard Shook, District 7, Mary Norwood, District 8, and Matt Westmoreland, Post 2 at large, reappointing Ms. Susan Blam to the Tree Conservation Commission. This appointment is for a term of 2 years to begin retroactively on August 5th, 2021, and expire August 4th, 2023.
Thank you. I believe we're going to ask us to hold this item, so I'll move to hold.
Second.
Second by Westmoreland. Please open the vote.
The vote is open. And the vote is closed.
Item is held, 6 yeas, 0 nays. Next item. And that takes us to ordinances for first reading.
Item number 2 is 23-0-1067, an ordinance by Community Development Human Services Committee to amend Ordinance 22-0-1710 to correct the funding amount by adding funds to cover certain costs that were omitted from said ordinance and for other purposes.
All right, I think that was our only item for first reading. Ordinance for second reading. Item number 3.
Item number 3, 23-0-1041, an ordinance by Community Development Human Services Committee authorizing the mayor to enter into a second amended intergovernmental agreement with the Atlanta Development Authority, DBA Invest Atlanta, for loan fund project management of the Brownfield Revolving Loan Fund so as to include provisions for fund and project management specific to the 2022 Brownfield Revolving Loan Grant awarded by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency pursuant to the bipartisan infrastructure law, authorizing the chief financial officer or his designee to pay from the account herein pursuant to the intergovernmental agreement in an amount not to exceed $3,485,000.00 and for other purposes.
Thank you. We have Jessica Lambier.
Yes, thank you. So I manage the Brownfield program, and it's funded with EPA grant. And our Brownfield Revolving Loan Fund, we finance brownfield remediation by providing loans to private property owners and grants to nonprofits. So last year around this time, EPA put out notice that they were funding, they had grants for existing revolving loan fund, and we submitted an application, and we were one of 39 high-performing revolving loan funds that was awarded, and we got the maximum amount, $3.9 million, and it's a 5-year grant. Invest Atlanta has several loan programs, so with this IGA, they are the actual agency that awards the loan, even though we do all of the work required for compliance with this grant. So in this IGA, because it's a bipartisan infrastructure law, it's a separate grant. So we have 2 grants, and so we'll be amending the existing IGA to add this grant as Exhibit 2. So the total is $3,485,000. Most of that money is going for loans, $3.3 million for loans, and then the rest of the fund is to pay the expenses of the Invest Atlanta staff in the management of the revolving loan fund program. So it's $120,000 or so for their expenses.
Any questions or comments from colleagues? Motion by Westmoreland, second by Bakhtiari. Before we open up, I did have a quick question, and I know we've talked about this program before, and I should know the answer, but I'm going to ask it again anyway. What's the typical grant size or loan size for this program?
So for nonprofits, we can award up to $500,000, and that's a big increase. With the previous award, it was $200,000, but there's no limit as to the size of a loan. So the largest loan we've awarded is $1.2 million.
Okay, thank you.
So we anticipate doing the same, doing a couple big loans, some small loans, and some in between.
Thank you.
So the one thing I'll say, if anybody has an applicant that would like to apply or has more questions about the loan program, they can contact me.
Thank you. Councilmember Lewis.
Does it have to be the council member that contacts you, or can the council member send an organization to contact you?
Oh, anybody can contact me about the program. We did a webinar on Thursday with Invest Atlanta, and based on that, people have been contacting me to find out more about the program, and I'm always looking for potential loan or grant recipients. So we have to demonstrate to EPA that we have a pipeline of projects because they want this money out the door and remediating brownfields.
And the most you've given out is 1.2 million. What's the least amount?
So we are giving a 50,000 grant to Remerge. They operate in Auburn Avenue, and they purchased a building that needs some remediation, so that's the smallest grant.
50K.
50K.
Well, I appreciate you.
We also just gave a loan to Concept House for 50K for remediation of the 1331 Metropolitan.
And thank you for that. Thank you for thinking about District 12 and being so specific. My next question is, you said grants and loans. What's the largest amount of a grant you've given out? 'Cause my folks like grants, not
Yeah,
loans.
so the largest was Two Trees Atlanta for their new
Their new
headquarter on Warner Avenue.
In
is,
District 12?
175,000, Two Trees Atlanta for that project.
Okay, so you gave them, that's from the city of Atlanta, 175K?
That's right, from this brownfield program.
But from the city?
That's right.
And was that last year or this year?
So originally it was 150, and we just increased that by 25,000 in October.
So 175 in the last calendar year.
I can't remember, maybe 2 years. So remediation takes a while.
And I only asked that because I know they reached out to District 12 again for 250,000. And so to add in 150,000, so that means District 12 needs to be looking at 100 more thousand because we did help them build their base, their new plant right here, their new base right here in District 12. So I appreciate you for telling me about the 150K that you finished off in October.
175. So it's originally 150. We increased it to 125. So we took care of 100% of their remediation needs.
In District 12, I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Lewis. So, motion from Westmoreland, second from Bakhtiari. Please open the vote.
The vote is open. And the vote is closed.
Okay, the motion is favorable, 6 yeas, 0 nays. Next item.
Item number 4 is 23-1042, an ordinance by Community Development Human Services Committee to amend the City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances, Chapter 110, Parks and Recreation, Article 1 in general, by amending Section 110-3 fee schedule to increase the park attendant's hourly wage to be consistent with the current city's minimum wage for employees' hourly rates and for other purposes.
Deputy Commissioner Voss. Good to see you, sir.
Thank you, Chairman Dozier and members of council. This ordinance simply aligns what is in code for a fee of $10.50 for a park attendant with the current minimum wage. It'll also make it so that we do not have to come back. It'll always be the minimum wage. This is an in and out account. It's an optional service that we offer. If people would like to hire a park attendant, if they have an event at a park and they want to have load in, they have to bring in a large caterer, that type of thing. It is not required to utilize a park, but it does make sure that the fee aligns with the minimum wage. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions or comments from colleagues? Motion by Winston, second by Bakhtiari. Councilman Lewis. Seeing none, please open the vote.
The vote is open. And the vote is closed.
Motion is favorable, 6 yeas, 0 nays. Next item.
Item number 5, 23-1043, an ordinance by Community Development Human Services Committee to waive the source selection and payment provisions contained in the city's Atlanta Code of Ordinances, Article 10, Procurement and Real Estate Code, including but not limited to Code Section 2-1547, and to authorize the mayor or his designee on behalf of the City of Atlanta to enter into a lease agreement with the Galloway School, Inc., for a term of 5 years with 2 additional 5-year renewal options with an effective date of August 30th, 2022 through August 29th, 2027 on behalf of the Department of Parks and Recreation and for other purposes.
Commissioner Voss.
Doug Voss, Department of Parks. This ordinance authorizes a renewal agreement. This agreement has been in place for over 30 years. It's for a building that's adjacent to the Galloway School in Chastain Park. We call it the Pool Concessions Building. So the upstairs is utilized by Galloway for a number of years. The downstairs is actually the restroom, weight room for the pool, which is a city-run pool that's available to the public. Galloway School is responsible for all of the maintenance, all of the preventative maintenance. They pay all the utilities. And over the years, they've invested about $260,000 in capital repairs, not just to their portion of the building, but also to the bottom. So we recommend a continuation of this lease agreement. They do, in recent years, also contribute a summer camp. They work with APS's Scott Elementary through the Horizons program, which is a neat program and nice to be able to offer that to Chastain Park. So.
Motion by
That's right.
Westmoreland, second by Bakhtiari. Councilman Lewis.
And blessed to have JB and at Roselle Fan. Do we need this? Some folks to help out with the pool. I know JB came in through being a lifeguard and being trained, and I know we're doing lifeguard training every single Saturday at Roselle Fan and at CT Martin, and so.
And tomorrow, in District 12, we have a job fair hosted by Councilmember Lewis. And
the biggest job fair in the history of
we would
Atlanta
love to
now.
see. We have been investing a lot of money into marketing. We've gotten a lot of phone calls, and I actually would like to thank council. I've had a lot of special calls from council members, parents, reaching out to our aquatics director, and he's told me even last night the calls are coming in, so we appreciate that.
And I will say I called Coach Mondo last night. I don't know if he told you, but I appreciate everything you all have done. The only department I've heard that actually sent out emails to people who've already applied for jobs was y'all. I have people screenshotting their emails, sending them to my DM on Instagram, telling me Department of Parks and Recreation told me I'll have an interview on the spot at Roselle Fan on Cleveland Avenue at your job fair. So I appreciate you for that. The only issue, and I know you got a text from me about it, and so did the mayor's office, was that when I came in, I'm new to this committee. And so typically when I go to committees, if the city of Atlanta has a person, a commissioner in that department, that person is actually at the committee meeting. And so today until now, I didn't see anybody from Parks and Recreation. And so I sent a text and an email to the mayor's office, and I said, hey, I don't see nobody from over there. And I support y'all so much so, and I know the work you're doing. I know y'all busy. I know what's going on, but it's too much money being moved around this committee for no one from Parks and Rec not to be here. So I'm happy to see you here. I was told that y'all didn't have any papers. So when I seen you walk up and speak to a paper, I'm like, wait, what is this? So what do we have to do? I'm new here, so I don't know. I apologize. So I'm new here, but coming from other committees, I'm typically used to seeing a person from the department in the city in that committee. And I was told you didn't have any papers here. And so I even text you. I said, hey, you don't have to come here if you don't have any papers, because I was trying to be relaxing. But now that you have a paper here, I want to see you every week. I'm happy to see you here.
I would say I'm almost here almost every week. You're probably sick of me, but we generally have, this is a council we probably have the most papers in. We do not attend I can speak for DPR. We don't necessarily go to public safety every time, but we're more than happy to attend. We often have a number of papers in FEC, and I'm often there. But I would say pretty frequently we'll have a paper here, but even if we don't, this is basically our committee of record.
I will make it known. I requested to be on this committee for you. I requested to be here for Parks and Recreation, particularly recreation. I want to see recreation get what every other department in the city of Atlanta has gotten. And we talk about crime in the city of Atlanta. I'm talking about jobs. When you talk about crime, I say jobs. When you talk about crime, I say let's say cooperators. Let's say police turn on their lights at night, because I'm trying to prevent it. I think one of the best ways to prevent crimes in the city of Atlanta is that Parks and Recreation in particular gets the funding it needs. Mr. Mondo, Coach Mondo gets the support that he needs, and the department gets the support it needs so that we can actually build and grow. Because people like me, we need y'all. We need y'all.
We need you too. So
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, I'll just say before I turn over to Councilman Westmoreland, the Department of Parks and Recreation has done a phenomenal job of coming and attending these meetings. They're just about every single one, as Deputy Commissioner Voss had mentioned. And I was tracking y'all had papers today, so I can talk with you as far as who we can expect so you have more questions available.
Well, they didn't know. I only say that because I similar to you, I think they attend all the time as well, but the text messages that I received was that they didn't think that they had papers here today, and that they weren't here because of that.
Okay.
The only comment I can make about that, and I'll use this as a shameless plug for our staff, is today we were late. We actually had a luncheon. We have, maybe people don't know this, but when we have shelter openings, our staff, in addition to many other staffs, support those shelter operations. We were open last night. We're going to expect to be open this weekend. And we had a luncheon today at MLK for all of the staff that actually worked on New Year's Day, Christmas Eve, to run shelters at Old Adamsville, Central. We opened up one at Thomasville, and then we had to move to Grant and Councilmember Winston, so appreciate all your support on that. But we had that luncheon today, and I think that's definitely, if I had to be late for one, that's the reason, and I appreciate our staff for doing that. So, yeah, thank you.
And definitely just let me know if you have any concerns about, want to make sure folks, just let me know, we'll get that, have it out. Councilmember Westmoreland.
Well, Mr. Chair beat me to it. I was going to thank you for your regular attendance at these meetings. But now I'll thank you and the team for everything you just said in terms of the services you provided during a very cold winter.
All right. I can't remember if we had a. Thank you. Please open the vote.
The vote is open. And the vote is closed.
All right, the motion carries, motion is favorable, 6 yeas, 0 nays. Next item.
Item number 6, 23-01050, an ordinance by council members Marcy Collier Overstreet, Amir Faroki, and Matt Westmoreland, authorizing the City of Atlanta to accept a donation of an artwork installation dedicated to Zerona Clayton at Hardy Ivy Park, the total value in which to be an amount not to exceed $200,000.00 from the Zerona Clayton statue project, to accept a donation of $17,500.00, the donated maintenance funds, to support the future conservation maintenance of the donated artwork, to authorize the depositing of donated funds accepted pursuant to this ordinance in the Park Pride account and the Public Arts Trust Fund, to authorize the mayor or his designee to execute any agreements necessary to effectuate the acceptance of these donations and further purposes.
We have Robert Witherspoon with the Mayor's Office of Cultural Affairs. If you could speak to this legislation.
Good afternoon. My name is Robert Witherspoon with the Mayor's Office of Cultural Affairs, and this ordinance will allow the city to move forward with this Zerona Clayton statue project's generous statue donation to the City of Atlanta. The bronze statue will honor the civil rights legacy and leadership that Zerona Clayton has contributed to our city and the nation. The location will be at Zerona Clayton Plaza, which is located in Hardy Ivy Park off of Peachtree Street in downtown. This project has the support and involvement of the city's Parks Department, and we're coordinating closely with them on this donation. The donation includes a maintenance endowment for the future preservation of the statue. And with the passage of this legislation, the anticipated unveiling would occur on March 8th, or is proposed for March 8th, 2023.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Motion by Westmoreland, second by Bakhtiari. See no discussion, please open the vote.
The vote is open. And the vote is closed.
The item is favorable, 6 yeas, 0 nays. We already took item number 7, so that takes to item number 8.
The committee mind taking item number 8 and 9 as a block?
Go ahead.
Item number 8, 23-01060, an ordinance by Council Member Jason H. Winston, authorizing the mayor or his designee on behalf of the Atlanta Workforce Development Agency, also known as WorkSource Atlanta, to accept a Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act Dislocated Worker Program grant in the amount of $1,127,841.00 from the Technical College System of Georgia Office of Workforce Development, to authorize the Chief Financial Officer to amend the FY23 Job Training Grant Fund budget by adding to anticipations and appropriations in an amount of $1,127,841.00 and further purposes. Item number 9 is 23-010 1061, an ordinance by Councilmember Jason Winston authorizing the mayor or his designee on behalf of the Atlanta Workforce Development Agency, also known as WorkSource Atlanta, to accept a Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act Adult Program Grant in the amount of $582,131.00 from the Technical College System of Georgia Office of Workforce Development to authorize the Chief Financial Officer to amend the FY22 Job Training Grant Fund budget by adding to anticipations and appropriations in the amount of $582,131.00 and for other purposes.
We have Ms. Amy Lancaster King with WorkSource Atlanta. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Thank you, Chairman Dozier and council members. These are just the second portion of our funds, our regular formula funds for dislocated worker and adult. So we get these funds in two tranches. The first tranche is the smaller ones, and these are the second tranches. They're the bigger tranches, and they're part of that kind of $3.2 million that Chief of Staff Donald alluded to earlier.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Motion by Winston, second by Bakhtiari. No discussion. Please open the vote. Oh, sorry. What?
The vote is open. And the vote is closed.
And the motion is favorable, 6 yeas, 0 nays. Next item. I believe that takes us actually that takes us to resolutions.
So item number 10 is 23R3083, a resolution by Councilmember Michael Julian Bond to request that the Department of City Planning, Office of Housing, report on the feasibility of creating a web-based affordable housing locator portal to connect Atlantans to affordable housing opportunities no later than May 31st, 2023, and for other purposes.
I have not had a chance to speak with the author, and I don't think we have anyone from the department to speak to this. There's a motion to hold by Bakhtiari. I'll second that, and we can revisit at the next meeting. Any discussion? Seeing none, please open the vote.
The vote is open.
So actually, can I put a? Okay. All right. So the motion withdrawn. We have the author here today to speak to this legislation. Councilmember Bond, thank you for joining us. If you could speak, tell us about the legislation and why you're supporting it.
I'd like to say good afternoon to you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I introduced this legislation after a conversation, actually, that I had with a constituent, Mr. Julius Smith, who told me about the affordable housing webpage that they actually have within the city of Boston. And that page differs from the one that Invest Atlanta now maintains, in the fact that the one that Invest Atlanta maintains only has affordable housing units that they have had a hand in developing. The page in Boston has not only publicly available units of affordable housing, but also privately developed units of affordable housing. It's maintained on a weekly basis, it is updated, and it has the latest information where people seeking affordable housing can find the latest and most available units.
And this is just for feasibility to see what the city could potentially do to replicate.
Well, yes, I mean, there are two solutions to this. I mean, the city could create its own webpage, or in our relationship with Invest Atlanta, they could modify theirs to include these additional, listings.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from colleagues? Councilman Lewis. Motion by Lewis, actually, all second, but Councilmember Amos.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to ask the author, can I add my name to this paper as well?
Certainly, yeah.
Let's see, we'll have to, I know we'll need to amend.
Can I withdraw my motion?
So we'll move to amend.
To amend.
And then
vote on
second
the
by
amendment.
Amos Please open the vote to amend.
I want to add my name to the paper as well.
Correct. And then before we open the vote, Councilman Westmoreland. Is this on the amendment or is this? Okay.
I'm going to vote in favor. Well, no, it's not. Let's take the amendment first.
Okay.
Can you make sure my name's added as well?
Yep. I believe they, yep. Please open the vote.
Okay, the vote is open. And the vote is closed. The paper's been amended.
And just to clarify, the initial motion is still on the table, or do we have to remake that motion?
Yes, the initial motion is still pending.
Okay, and that was.
You voted on the amendment.
Correct.
Now you're back to the main motion as amended.
Thank you. And that motion was Lewis, and I seconded Councilman Westmoreland. All right. Please open the vote.
Vote is open. And the vote is closed.
All right, the motion is favorable as amended, 6 yeas, 0 nays. Councilman Westmoreland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Bond, for your legislation. It seems to have made its way through the system because I got a message from Carmen Chubb saying someone reached out to see if DCA still has a housing locator system, and they do, and sent me a link to georgiahousingsearch.org, which I had never heard of before. So perhaps that information can also be included in the work that our department does to share this information more publicly.
Absolutely, and just want to make sure credit goes where credit is due. I want to thank our constituent Julia Smith for bringing me this idea. So, if you're listening, Julius, it's passed.
Thank you, Councilman Bond.
Thank you.
All right, I think that was our last item for resolutions. For dual referred, item number 11, I believe that's still held in PSLA, so we will not be taking that today. And then that takes us to papers held in committee. We already took the appointment communication for Mr. King, so that I believe then completes our legislative agenda. All right, any general remarks? Councilman Bakhtiari.
For anyone who is an animal lover, Fulton County, DeKalb County Animal Shelter is about as close to 600 animals over capacity. They are adopting out, they need to adopt out 150 animals in the next, 150 dogs in the next 7 days, or they will be euthanized. They're asking for specifically medium and large sized dogs. The adoption fee is only $23. Please, if you are able, please go and adopt an animal. We have 7 days to adopt out 150 dogs, or they will be euthanized. So if you are able, please go to DeKalb Animal Shelter and adopt an animal today.
Thank you. Councilman Lewis.
I just want to make sure I invite everybody out to our job fair tomorrow. Tomorrow we will have 430 jobs. Currently we have about 500 people already signed up. So it's my goal and my job to go and find some more jobs. Today we had a canvassing organization reach out to us and say they're going to be hiring folks at $20 per hour at $40 per 40 hours per week, $20 per hour. So I added 40 more jobs to it. All night I'll be trying to get to that extra 100 jobs that we need to bring people in. If you need a job, a career, $20 an hour, make sure you pull up on me on Cleveland Avenue where I grew up at on Roselle Fan. I look forward to seeing folks tomorrow at Roselle Fan from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. I won't leave until it ends. I'll be there to make sure people get jobs. So I look forward to seeing people tomorrow, hiring people for the city of Atlanta. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Lewis. Any other colleagues? Before we adjourn, a couple of quick remarks. One, next Monday is a 5th Monday for the month of January, which means there will not be a full council meeting. Our next meeting will be the following week. Because of that, our next Community Development Human Services Committee meeting won't be until February 14th, which is Valentine's Day. So committee members, please be my sweetheart and get me your goals and objectives in on time. And then lastly, I was working on that joke for a while, y'all. Lastly, we are undergoing the city's annual point-in-time count for our homeless and unsheltered population. Even though we all think about the point-in-time count as being the overnight count, it actually goes on throughout the week. We do have some daytime count opportunities. Please go to the Partners in Home website, partnersinhome.org, I believe. They are spearheading that effort to count all of our unsheltered populations, and that will make it easier and better and more efficient for our city to be able to deliver services to that critical population. With that being said, this meeting is adjourned.